Pregame, Week 15, Jorge Edwards, Nate Markham. It is playoff time. Well, it's the continuation of playoff time because we had games yesterday and Thursday. The best time of year is our wives love to know that football's 24/7, and we're going to join you for the next 3 hours. Let's hit it. Oh man, it's D-Day, whatever moniker you want to throw this upon people. It's not for everybody. Some people want to buy, sitting back watching the struggle, the agony. I don't know about you, but I've heard people say that I hate having a buy. I just really want to play. Screw that nonsense. Give me a buy all day long. Make my chance to get to the championship. One game less that I have to stress and worry about injuries or, getting Easton sticked or Aiden O'Connell or any of the other Ty Chandler. You insert the name.
Sure.
How you doing, man? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm doing well. So you want to hear a funny story? We talked about on Shoot the Gap I think it was on Shoot the Gap how my wife edged me out for the final playoff spot because she had more points for than I did, even though we both won and had the same record. So this week she's taking on former fantasy and framer Teddy Ricketson in our home playoff league. And Teddy forgot to swap out Justin Herbert earlier in the week. So he got a big fat 0 at the quarterback position, which I'm like, really? You're handing the misses, but they are currently projected neck and neck because Teddy had Jahmyr Gibbs, Deontay Johnson, and Hawkinson go last night, and so it is, man. I am conflicted because it's one of those things where it's like, oh well, family to win, but my wife talks so much shit, so I don't want to have her win. But Teddy is not doing me any favors here. So, well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But aside from that, things are good. How are you?
Good. Yeah. Here, you can always hold that over her head. Just talk, she brags, just mention the fact that you beat him without him starting a quarterback, which is on average the highest scoring position on your team. So not exactly, don't get me wrong. Flags fly forever and you can pay the bills with money earned, no matter how soft the way of winning was. But I'm rooting for her. Not that I'm rooting against Teddy, but it's, I think, happy wife, happy life at the end of the day in some capacity. We'll see. I don't know if that's supposed to be a phrase. Happy house, happy spouse, or whatever the hell people say anymore.
Yeah. So you're right. 9 times out of 10, 99%. Absolutely. But I go back to the same point. She talks so much shit, and so it's kind of like, oh my god, I'm not going to hear the end of this for a whole year. But I guess I have to root for her.
So you need to learn the ways of me. I don't listen to half the shit Carrie says. You see, that's the best part is when you don't pay attention to it, you don't have to hear the shit talk. So it's pretty much just background noise at this point. She could. I hear not the wah 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 peanut style. I hear mostly just adoration and compliments that I just project and manifest coming from her mouth. That's how it is. But we have I would say a pretty light slate, but still kind of still enough for us to go through. And there's plenty of games, matchups, fantasy implications on the line as we get into the first game of the Sunday, which is the Chicago Bears of the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland's favored by 3 at home, 37.5, implied over. The, weather-wise, it could be tricky. That's where I'm wondering exactly if there's going to be anything to do with you starting your starters, and I don't see that what it was. I lost the weather on there, but I think it's supposed to be
15 mile per hour, gusts of 20 to 25, showers, 47 degrees. So not exactly your ideal circumstance here, but I never thought, and nobody ever thought this heading into week 10 of the season, that, wow, even in a bad weather game, in terms of quarterbacks with, strong arms, I would be comparing Justin Fields to Joe Flacco. And I got to be honest with you, we were talking before the show about our thoughts on Joe Flacco in this matchup. Me personally, I understand it's week 15, it's the playoffs, which, by the way, folks, I know a lot of you out there are like nervous. You're like, oh my God, am I going to win or lose? We're going to make sure you walk out after watching this show today for all 3 hours that you are confident knowing you're going to rock this thing. I'm kind of feeling confident with Flacco. He's just been playing so darn good, and I'm not really worried about the inclement weather. Look, he played in Baltimore for all those years. He's used to having all the outdoor poor weather conditions, and the guy can still sling it. It's crazy how well he's played. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Joe Flacco this week?
I don't know. That's the hard part. When I isolate it and break it down, you look at, points against, and I know a 4-week sample isn't the end all be all, but it's a pretty good indicator, at least for recency bias. And the Bears over under 15 points allowed to the quarterback over the last month. What would you say?
I would say that is not ideal. But who are the quarterbacks?
No, that's not that. No, that's the question. Do you think it's over or under 15?
Slightly over 16 or so.
It's 7.
Wow.
7 points allowed to the quarterback position over the last 4 weeks. That's my concern.
Yeah, that's a good concern. That's a good concern.
I mean, and I granted, again, when you look at the teams and you think, okay, let's take a look at the quarterbacks they've played, regardless of who they've played. I mean, we've seen that over the last couple, really weeks. Even the one-off week doesn't taint the a 4-game sample or a 4-game average to the point where it's at 7. That's my only concern. But yet, at the same time, it's Joe Flacco. Some people are in situations where I'll throw this at you. Joe Flacco or, so many people have played, but Flacco or Baker Mayfield against Green Bay.
Yeah, I got to roll with Baker. I can't. Yeah. Okay.
So, maybe the situations that you have Geno and going into Monday night with the groin, not likely to play potentially. We'll talk about that game later, of course. But that's a situation where if I'm rolling with Flacco, I'm not gonna dive into the waiver and start looking at players like Tommy DeVito at New Orleans. I don't think so, at least. Or where's your bar at for Flacco? But we're talking about Superflex leagues, most likely 9 times out of 10. So in Superflex leagues, let's be honest, even in a tough matchup, what Flacco's proven over the last couple weeks is that he's producing as really as QB1. I mean, QB13, QB10 over the last 2. So I think you could do worse for sure. I'm not optimistic. Let's put it that way. So if you have a choice to be made, hit us up. I'd love to see what the choices are that you're worried about or considering.
And also for the people out there watching today, the website that we use to broadcast our shows, StreamYard, for the longest time would not allow us to see comments from X or Twitter. Now they do. So if you're watching us on X or /Twitter, feel free to just drop those comments in there, and we will answer them as quickly as we can.
Love it. Yep. Good. You don't have to bounce around. No more. If you're watching on Twitter, jump over to YouTube and do it that way. But all right. So outside of the quarterback position, because we know you're starting Justin Fields.
Right.
There's only really one running back in Chicago. We saw it last week with everybody back in tow. They pretty much only leaned on D'Onta Foreman with any type of consistency. That being said, against a Cleveland defense that realistically, Jorge, is that this Cleveland defense for the first, 10 weeks of the season was an avoid at all costs against any offensive player going against them. We've seen over the last, really, like I said, the last 4 weeks, they've been a little more generous as a whole. If you look at like against the running back position, the middle of the pack now, 23.5 points allowed. If you go to the wide receiver spot, they're still lower, but almost double what they were giving up to most positions over the last 4 weeks. When you look at D'Onta Foreman, knowing that maybe in a situation that they want to keep the ball on the ground with weather implications potentially, he's not the most dynamic running back, but will there be enough volume for him to be in your lineup comfortably?
So comfortably, no, because, and you mentioned, the sample size of the past 3 or 4 weeks, that notwithstanding, Cleveland this year has been rather stingy as terms of like allowing running backs to score when they're in scoring position, aka within the 5-yard line. But you look at the hits along the defensive line for Cleveland, both inside and outside. We haven't mentioned, but Banya Okoronkwo, he's out. He comes in a rotation there with Za'Darius. But you look at the defensive tackle situation. They're just Grant Delpit not helping out and run support anymore because he's on IR. I don't think I am as scared of this matchup as I would have been earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's fair. It's the one consistency that the Cleveland's shown defensively is that they'll trust in JOK going forward. And we'll obviously talk about the defensive side of the ball, but on the Cleveland side of the ball from the running back position there, it's pretty much been shown over I'd say the majority of the season since Nick Chubb injury that they're comfortable with Jerome Ford leading at least 50 to 60% of the backfield, short of maybe a week off here or there. Is Jerome Ford, again, do you want to put him into that just kind of flex-ish, not comfortable there? But we've also talked about this Chicago Bears defense, and that goes a little bit too. We talk about just how much they have changed. I don't know if it's their whole defensive structure, if it's the way that if the pass rush is aiding in other areas, but I want to lean on Jerome Ford's usage. I mean, he's averaging 16.5 touches over the last 4 weeks. So, I mean, he's getting the volume. Will the touchdowns be there? I think is probably the biggest question.
Well, yeah, exactly. You have to ask yourself, okay, how much are they going to use Kareem Hunt, closer to the goal line? I actually am okay with Jerome Ford this week. Look, it really comes down. It really comes down to whenever you talk about whether it's a receiving matchup, that you're facing each week, or if it's a running back matchup, how balanced this offense can be. And so it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. How much do you trust Joe Flacco in this situation? So if you're of the belief that, he could be serviceable, maybe not for fantasy, but maybe just from an NFL standpoint and getting the ball to his playmakers, then yeah, I'm all in on Jerome Ford. There's nothing that, and another thing is like, who else are you putting in there? You know what I mean? Like if you, who else is available that you would feel
I know. And that's going to be, I think that's going to be the thesis of every conversation we have with any of these people that are flex options. So, I mean, and it's playoff week 1. We know that the majority of teams, if you made the playoffs, you probably don't have an entire roster full of garbage flex options. But like, this is a good one here because I'm guessing, good morning, Sleepy, is that starting Taysom Hill over Cole Kmet. Taysom Hill for the weeks leading up to the playoffs were carrying teams. So here's a situation. Sleepy might have just dominated the whole league the entire time. But in a matchup where Taysom Hill's coming back, we know there's, likelihood that Chris Olave's not going to play. they've leaned on Taysom Hill in the past. Cole Kmet going against in this matchup we're talking about against Cleveland, and Cleveland's been extremely stingy to the tight end position outside of 2 games. I mean, and those 2 games were Mark Andrews in week 4 and Evan Ingram this past week. And this past week was a monster. So recency wise, you're looking at Evan Ingram putting up 30 plus points against him. But man, prior to that, it has been a nothing for everybody. Even the repeat game against Baltimore, Andrews and Likely didn't even put up 10 combined. So I'm going to lean Taysom Hill just strictly because I think that the upside is tremendous there. Which way are you leaning?
Yeah, when you're looking at Cole Kmet going back to week 10, you like what you see in terms of like usage. Hell, let's go back to week 8, 10 targets, 8 targets, 7 targets, 4, 7, 6 versus Detroit in week 14. But the yardage just hasn't been there, like 55, 45, 20, 43, 66. So really touchdown dependent. And like Sleepy said, he's shooting for that upside. I agree. I think you have to roll Taysom Hill this week.
Yeah, it's, and we do this every week too. What type of situation are you in? Are you, and he told us he's shooting for the upside, which is helpful whenever it comes to making these decisions. I think I would shoot for him anyway, regardless if I'm always shooting for upside, I guess is kind of simple. All right. So, full point per half point for tight end premium, pick 2, Olave, Mostert, D-Hop, or Kmet. So Olave is most likely not playing. So I think that eliminates him. I say most likely. Don't ever. If he plays, actually, okay, there you go. Let's say he makes a miraculous recovery and they do say he's going to play. Would Olave be in one of these 2 options for you, Jorge?
He would. Right. So it's like you look at Olave, you look at Hopkins, okay, like mid quarterbacks, but Will Levis, he had a game last week. That was super impressive. I think I would go Mostert, definitely Mostert here. And I yeah, I would go Olave. I would swing for Olave here. I understand the tight end premium nature, and I guess given the tight end premium 1.5 points per. Again, going back to what I just said about Cole Kmet, the 6 target average, the 5 receptions or so, that definitely is something to consider. But I still think you want to go with your alphas here and go with Olave and Mostert, despite the advantage this might give you at the tight end position.
See, I'm taking Hopkins all day. I have Hopkins as a top 15 option this week. I think he's going to absolutely eat against Houston. They're suspect. I mean, we saw that without Tavier Thomas. I know that they have Derek Stingley, but the matchups have been, his volume has just been, I don't know. I can't compare too many other players in the league right now that are seeing the target percentage. Like I said this last week, that was the hardest thing with D-Hop is like, what's he going to do with a 35%, 40% target percentage, which is what he's done basically the last 2 weeks, 39 and 36. And he's turned in back-to-back, top 15 performances. And he's had 3 top 20 performances in his last 4 weeks. So we think that this drop-off really, which has been more talked about, people, myself included, just assume that Hopkins hasn't done anything. But yet, at the end of the week, he gets it done. And last week and I'm not just saying that because last week, not recency bias, but I'll go Mostert and Hopkins. So maybe with Olave being out, you don't have to worry about that, Jim. That would be the ideal scenario not ideal to lose Olave, but ideal to not have to bounce back and forth between the 2 of us.
There you go.
So,
should we get IDP for this match? Or do we want to talk about DJ Moore? Are we even concerned about DJ Moore anymore? Yeah, I know he has the ankle injury here. But
that concerns me a little bit because it's Well, I guess you know what, he got the full practice in Friday. I probably shouldn't worry about it. So no, I'm not going to worry about DJ Moore there. I don't think there's any other receiving options for Chicago. Amari Cooper, I think he's probably a wide receiver, low end wide receiver too, but nobody else on this outside of, I think you're starting Cole Kmet and you're starting David Njoku. But yeah, IDP side, let's start with Chicago. We talked earlier about Montez Sweat, right? Yep. Here's a Cleveland offensive line that has been a little, I don't want to use the word suspect, but they have allowed more pressures as of late. We know that if the weather does get bad, that they're going to keep the ball on the ground. Is Montez Sweat someone that you think that there's a likelihood that he could possibly have? He has a sneaky good production that we've seen, really since joining Chicago from a pressure standpoint versus like when he was with with Washington, his sack to pressure ratio was ridiculous, very unsustainable. But he's kept it kind of close. I think if I'm not mistaken, it is about 20, almost 21%. So yeah. Does he get to the quarterback is the question.
Yeah. You look at the pressures since week 12, total of 13, 4 sacks, quarterback hits, hurries. We saw in Washington, he didn't need an alpha on the other side to help get those pressures to get, he just needed somebody who was fairly competent, and we look at somebody who's been fairly competent during that time span, weeks 12 through 14, DeMarcus Walker, yes, 5 pressures only, no sacks, but a win rate of 15.6%. So he is posing a threat to offensive tackles, which is enough, I believe, to free up Montez Sweat. So I think you do see, and let's face it, Joe Flacco is not exactly fleet of foot here. So if he gets that 1-on-1 matchup, I think Sweat could have a big day.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you, I'd have a hard time if someone has a start sit with Sweat. I'd like to see what the options are. And I think there's a case to be made that I could be convinced, but it might take that right situation. So the best options at the flex and full point PPR. Gibson, no Brian Robinson. OBJ, big play. Hollywood, been banged up. A chain, banged up. Is Gibson starting right now, but not sure switching to OBJ because opponent has Lamar? Let's break that down 2 ways there, Jorge. Number one, with having Gibson in right now, without Brian Robinson, you being the Washington fan, is it a Gibson? So we talked about this earlier in the week too. You think this is going to be clearly a Rams blowout game, or at least maybe not blowout. You think the Rams are going to win. Therefore, most likely leaving a game script that it's going to be Antonio Gibson seeing the majority of the work. What's your likelihood that Rodriguez is going to take on a healthier role than expected?
I think he will definitely have a role this week. This is probably going to be his career, as a rookie, his career best attempts. We did see earlier in the season his yard for carry average was not horrible. It'll be different to see what happens this week versus the defensive line for the Los Angeles Rams we talked about. Well, I guess we'll talk about a little bit later. Aaron Donald looks like he will be leaning towards playing. He was dealing, I believe, with like a groin injury. So that, front of the defensive line for the Rams is formidable. But to answer, going back to this question, look, Gibson and Brian Robinson had been both very heavily involved in the receiving game, receiving metrics, yards after the catch for reception for a good stretch. Had been leaning towards both of these guys. And so no Brian Robinson, and thank you very much for your tactfulness of saying a blowout. Well, not really a blowout, but they expect, no, it's going to be a blowout. Unfortunately. So, I understand the Gibson thing, but Beckham, I agree, has been playing so well lately. It's kind of hard to fade him, especially in what I think should be a very exciting matchup against Jacksonville on Sunday Night Football. So if I had to go with one, it'd be Beckham.
Yeah. Man, I think the likelihood of a, low output absolutely low ceiling or floor, is the highest for OBJ of the three. If you could say everybody plays healthily and has opportunity, but that's what worries me. Hollywood with the heel injury against San Francisco, that offense in Arizona might not get started at all. And I know there's garbage time opportunities for Hollywood, but I don't know if I want to trust that. Or, a chain is, why would Miami in a matchup that they should get ahead early even risk re-injury again, let him stay healthy for the playoffs? So, and I was against OBJ last week and he burned me, so I'll say OBJ this week. And Sleepy, let's hope that it doesn't turn around and backfire there. So yeah, OBJ. And now Malcolm, good morning, good to see you as always. Dallas Goedert versus Seattle, or Evan Ingram versus the Ravens. What do you think?
Yeah, I am not, and I have not been a Dallas Goedert fan. One of our fellow fantasy and framers, Drew, he has been more of a Dallas Goedert fan, and he would point out the he's on this many running route, this many snaps and routes run, and opportunity. But production. We look at half PPR. He's only gotten 2 games with double-digit fantasy points, and the rest has just been in the tank. And look, I get it. Tight end is a wasteland, yada yada yada. But for somebody who was supposed to be one of the top 5 or 6 tight ends in fantasy, just hasn't been producing. On the flip side, Evan Ingram, we've seen a bump in his production lately. So I would roll Evan Ingram versus the Ravens this week.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's where the argument of taking sides because of volume and opportunity doesn't necessarily benefit either one, because Evan Ingram is utilized at a greater clip than Dallas Goedert. Evan Ingram, if you look at target percentage, on the season, it's 23%. You have to go back to week number 5 where it wasn't 20%. I'm starting Evan Ingram over, I think, everybody but 1 or 2. Let's see. I think he's my tight end 4. He's my tight end 5. I'm an idiot. I'm going to move him up to tight end 4. I'm going to move him ahead of George Kittle. See you, George. Luckily, my tight end 1 this week is Sam Laporta. So that worked out decently well, I would say, so far to start the week, which, Jorge, I'm not going to take any tight end, hype or pat myself yet, because we still got 5 weeks, but I'm hoping for a strong push for tight end, because at Fantasy Pro Scoring right now, I would like to have the title of the number 1 tight end ranker to offset my IDP drops and fall. But I am sitting, I think, at 2nd or 3rd there now so far on the season. So let's see if we can make a push. So come on, Evan Ingram, let's go.
Malcolm has another question here. If Gino doesn't play, would Drew Lock be a better player than Joe Flacco?
Dude, Philly's been, so easy to put up fantasy points for both quarterbacks and wide receivers over just, the season realistically. Number 1 on the season against quarterbacks. Oh, Drew Lock. I, unfortunately, being here in Missouri, not the biggest Drew Lock fan, because I'm an Illini and I just wanted to shit on him. But it's tough, buddy, because honestly, we just talked earlier that Flacco against the Chicago Bears team that, Malcolm, if you just join us, over the last month, they've allowed a total of 7 points on average to the opposing quarterbacks. That's rough. That's a unlikely to have QB1 upside type situation. But what do you think, Jorge? Is Seattle capable of staying in this game and making value out of Drew Lock?
No, I don't think that they're capable with Drew Lock to stay in this game, which gives me more confidence in Lock, though, because now what are we talking? We're talking garbage time. And so I think, given that scenario, I think I'd roll with Drew Lock. Oh, God, I feel so gross.
I know. Malcolm, what is... God, now
I'm trying to make us roll this early in the morning? Come on, Malcolm. That's just horrible.
And I got to move Drew Lock up in my rank. I'm going to do it. I'm going to follow it. You guys are basically my muse when it comes to all these rankings, which, by the way, so that's my reason. If I ever have a down week, I go, well, Malcolm had me convinced that he needs to start, that Drew Lock is a better option. Jorge told me that Demarcus Robinson, Demario Douglas, Michael Wilson, or Zay Jones is a list of names that most people in playoff weeks probably wouldn't want to have to start. That being said, Demarcus Robinson, we saw really the last couple weeks now, he's been much more heavily involved with that passing game. Jorge, is Demarcus Robinson? Let's see. So just choose one, I'm guessing. So that's good. Or not good.
I think I'm
go for it.
Yeah, I think I'll go to Marcus Robinson here. You just love the matchup.
I do too. I think that it just all signs point to his involvement, and I don't think it was just a complete one-off situation. And Demario Douglas against KC, that they've shown just week in and week out, it's hard enough to get consistent fantasy points against that. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I really wish I could trust Michael Wilson to come back strong, because San Francisco, as good as the defense is, they do allow team wide receivers to score, but a lot of that, like we talked about earlier, it's all garbage time situations and dependent. But hey, I'm here for garbage time. I can tell you, I've won many leagues over the years where I had someone like Gardner Minshew, and mostly Jacksonville quarterbacks had been my garbage time.
Like Bortles.
Yep. You got a drop for question of the week or anything nice on your little drop board over there?
I don't. I'm taking all these notes as far as drops we got to add for next season, or at least for next week. But
sorry, Sleepy.
Yeah. Question of the week: Fields or Tua? Tough decisions. I'm going Fields. I just like the rushing upside here.
Yeah, me too. And it's that's a tough matchup for Miami, despite the fact that they're heavy favorites. I think that's just because the Jets' offense will be so pathetic.
Yeah. And we got here from Ken Sonnenberg. Good morning, Mr. Sonnenberg. Gus Edwards or Zach Charbonnet, and a lot of prayer. What disappoints me is Zach Charbonnet is that, given the weeks that, oh my God, why am I blanking? When he has been the starter, with Kenneth Walker being out due to injury, just the efficiency of the yards per carry, just being able to really take advantage of this opportunity just wasn't there. Now he's playing second fiddle again. Give me Gus Edwards.
Yeah, and that's the way I feel about Gus Edwards, though, too. I think Gus Edwards has become second fiddle. If you look at his when's the last time he's had I'll give you the answer. It was going to be kind of one of those rhetorical questions, like when's the last time he's had higher than a 50% snap share? And that's week 10. And since then, it's just gone down 40, 20, 20. And that worries me. But all it takes is for them to be anywhere near the goal line. And most likely Gus's touchdown will supersede Charbonnet's value and involvement. So I'm going to lean Gus as well and hope that he gets in the end zone. I don't like it, though, Ken. Not a big fan.
He said a lot of prayer, so that is something.
Oh, okay.
He put a disclaimer on there.
Real quick, before that, also, Carrie and I, we went to the movies on Thursday night, and we're sitting there, and a guy walks in directly in front of us, walks past, and she goes, "Holy, is that Ken?" And I swear to you on all things, ask Carrie this, it is Ken's doppelganger to a T. And he came through, sat down at the end of the thing, and I go, "Is that who?" She goes, I go, "Looks like Ken Sonnenberg." She goes, "That's what I said. Is that Ken?" And I went, "Why would Ken be in St. Louis watching Wonka?" But I thought that is a Ken thing to do. Just up and fly somewhere and just go to the movies and just hang out. One of the things I respect completely about him. But it is Ken Sonnenberg. You have a doppelganger out there. He would start Zach Charbonnet in this situation. So good luck. One of the two Ken Sonnenbergs, doppelganger and or the OG.
All right, we got a question from Craig, who makes the best puns on the internet. If you're not following him, go follow him on Twitter. King's Classic Scoring. All right. Aziz Alshire, Ernest. I know, right? Ernest Jones, Quincy Williams.
No, it's wait, is that wait, is Alshire sick? Or is he cleared to play? Last I saw, there was an illness situation with him.
Yeah, I saw that. But
I don't see anything on the injury report or anything. All right, go ahead, continue. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I had that notice.
No, yeah, Ernest Jones, Williams, or JOK start 3. For me, it would be
who you
Jones. Sitting? I'm sitting Alshire, ironically.
Yep, I am too. I love the other matchups. I do. So, and Craig, I'm gonna say I wish you the best of luck. I wish I was competing with you guys, but unfortunately, I have failed us all, and hopefully we don't fail you.
Ken says, "You never know where I'm going to show up. I do have to meet this person now." Okay, we got a question here from Ted Nugent 81. Excellent handle there. Colonel Mostert. Wow, I'm loving this. Or Honey Bijan. Wow, that's I love that. That's good.
I do too.
Who are you choosing here?
Oh man, I think I'm going to go with Bijan. I do like the matchup for Mostert as far as like them. I don't know about matchup per se. That sounds bad because it's the Jets, but I think that the point total is definitely benefiting. But Carolina, just too tasty of a matchup, and Atlanta. I mean, realistically, I feel like I don't want to say this. I think we talked about it the last couple of weeks that maybe they're making the right moves as of late, and they're actually doing the smart thing. I mean, bite my tongue and all, but Bijan, well, we see last week, shockingly, it wasn't the season high, but it was close. 77% of the snaps was the second highest of the season for him. But I'm liking what he's doing out of the backfield now over the last couple of weeks. We're seeing target shares near 20%. It's what the Bijan that we've expected the entire season, that we haven't had just to rely on him popping one because utilization wasn't there. So yeah, it is Honey Bijan, which is the better of the two mustards, by the way. I do believe, if you ask me.
I agree. All right, let's go through these next 2 questions, then let's get back on track for our next game here. We got Malcolm back in here. Dalton Kincaid or Taysom Hill. Going back to the upside, I think I'd roll Taysom. Kincaid, Dawson Knox is back in the mix. We saw kind of a dip in Kincaid's production again. Although, Kansas City is stingy against the tight end position. So I still think I'd roll Taysom here.
I would too. And Kincaid's been a little banged up this week. Limited practices and Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So I think that you'll see maybe them lean a little bit heavier on Dawson Knox just to take some of the workload off Kincaid. And Taysom Hill, don't get me wrong. I think there's more volatility in that play. I think that the likelihood that he could do nothing is greater than the Kincaid, but I'm leaning Taysom.
All right, last one, full PPR, tight end flex, Njoku, Dalton Kincaid, Godwin, or DeMarcus Robinson.
Njoku for one is easy. The second one's a little bit tougher because, man, Godwin's been just so bad on the year that it's really hard to ever want to say Chris Godwin's name. I think the matchup is a little bit better than the others. But Chris Godwin's questionable tag, and I mean, he's expected to play, but I mean, he didn't even practice Friday. So do I want to say DeMarcus Robinson here again? Is that really what I'm going to do?
I think you do.
Oh my God. What is wrong? I don't know if I want to or not, because when given the situation, if you said, Nate, put him in your lineup, I still think I would go Godwin.
Like, because he's the 2 and Robinson's the 3, just based off of pecking order of targets.
Yep, that's exactly right. And there's a likelihood that, and DeMarcus Robinson's 4 when it comes to offensive weapons. Maybe, I mean, I don't want to say 5 because that's not fair, but it starts getting a little tricky when you start looking at every other option out there. So I'm going to say Godwin.
Okay. think you convinced me. Njoku, Godwin. Yeah. All right. Shall we get on to the next matchup, Atlanta and Carolina? And where's Keith Fleming for this one? Because this should be fun.
Yeah. Where in the world is Keith? And don't worry, Gerald and everybody else. We will, if you have any other questions, obviously let us know. But yeah, so real quick on the IDP side for the Cleveland Chicago, JOK, as Craig said, I do like JOK in this matchup. Both linebackers are in both great spots. Linebackers for both Cleveland and Chicago have scored well against those opposites. The opposing teams, or the teams have allowed linebackers to score well. And then in the secondary, Jaquan Brisker is an all day, every day. I don't think there's any like sits necessarily. I wouldn't play another linebacker besides JOK without Juan Thornhill. Grant Delpit, who is out now on IR, extremely thin Cleveland secondary. So I don't know if there's someone that I really want to recommend in that particular matchup. Jorge, anything else?
No. And obviously we talked about Sweat a little bit earlier. For me, Myles Garrett. Those are obvious plays. So yeah, nope, we're good.
Cool. All right. Like you said, Atlanta 3-point favorites, travel to Carolina, 32.5 point over. For Atlanta, Caleb McGarry is out. David Onyemata is out. Nate Landman, who has been limited at practice returns. We saw the impact of not having Onyemata and Nate Landman last week against Tampa, and Rashad White just absolutely torched him. And congratulations, Keith, on your DFS victory. He even sent me a little note, which I thought was really uplifting. He said, hey, a lot of this has to do with your discussion about the lack of Onyemata and Nate Landman, and he shifted or pivoted, if you will, to Rashad White. So he put him in that lineup. I need to put my Venmo back on here again, Keith, just in case you lost it. I'm happy, except tax-free, of course. But yeah, I think the same thing, if we want to bypass both Desmond Ridder and Bryce Young, which we do, right? You don't want to recommend either one of those two. I don't want to, poo-poo on your parade, but I'm out there. We know we're going to start Bijan, but given what we saw last week with Rashad White, given what we've seen over the last couple of weeks with Chuba Hubbard's involvement and his actual, volume of touches, is Chuba Hubbard, efficiency might not have been the greatest. He might not be the best running back in the league, but volume is key. And will he have the key to unlock a playoff victory for you this week?
I think he will present a steady floor just because of said volume. If you're looking for something, high upside, high play, I'm not sold on that this week.
Yeah. Drake London absolutely destroyed it last week. Very happy to have been a believer in that last week as well. Does the belief carry this week? You think he can? I don't want to ask if he's going to put up 170 yards and 10 catches, etc. But you think there's enough volume to go around to feed Bijan and keep Drake London as a top 24 wide receiver this week?
Carolina, they're in the well, I guess how you look at it, they're in the tops of the league in fewest fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. So that's a little concerning there for Drake London. I'd be concerned. I would not be surprised you actually see more Tyler Algier this game, and they kind of keep it to the Arthur Smith, playbook there. But top 24, the target volume is ridiculous. Would he have like 11 targets, 10 receptions last week? So,
yep, exactly.
I think hovering around, in the 20s, between 20 wide receiver 20, wide receiver 30 is reasonable.
Yeah, it's hard to ask for anything more when you look at his, PPR ranks over the last weeks. You see number 2 overall last week, then 67 the week before, then top 25, then 45th, then 40th, then top 25, then 5th, then top 20, and 60th. So it's like, this the pendulum swing can be drastic, but he's an alpha, and that's what I want. I'm gonna always recommend an alpha on over a beta, I guess, if we're gonna really get down to it. But you have to identify who that is, or what,
of course. Or a gamma or an omega. No, I got you. Yeah,
gotcha. Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
Any other wide receiver? So Adam Thielen, I guess that's the only other real true wide receiver that's in this matchup that I'm going to look at. I know people will say that maybe the Jonathan Mingo conversation should start or continue. There's nobody in Atlanta that I even want to talk about because I don't think there's anybody that anybody knows. But, well, is there volume play for Adam Thielen maybe as a flex or wide receiver 2? What are you envisioning?
Yeah, I'm envisioning back to week 1 versus Atlanta in Atlanta, where he got you in half PPR 2.2 points. We look back to last week against New Orleans. He did nothing, and I know this because I had him in one of my flexes for the Kings Classic. He did nothing until like the third, end of the third, fourth quarter, into the fourth quarter, where all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's start throwing the Thielens way. Let's just let's pad these stats. I don't see Atlanta getting up so big that they'll have to just, I don't think garbage time is going to be a factor, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I just wonder how the volume will, because I think we assume the target share and the just overall looks his way will be high enough that it should turn into something, but it hasn't. I mean, it's usually, 50 yards receiving and not much else. So I'm right there with you. Kyle Pitts, borderline tight end 1. Every week is kind of windy road in that a song. Yeah. Every day is a windy road or whatever. That's what I feel with Kyle Pitts. You get to the fork of the road and you want to keep going down the nice, sunny, tree-lined path. But unfortunately, you go down the dark, windy, treacherous one that is volatility.
Did you just drop a Sheryl Crow reference just now?
Did you have to look up who that was?
No, I knew who it was right off the bat, which I don't know what that says about me. But the point is that I picked up on that right away, and I'm like, that's Sheryl Crow.
Sheryl Crow, a music teacher here in St. Louis. Yeah, she was a buddy of mine's music teacher. What do you think of
that? I think that's very interesting.
Yep. That's why I like hometown references. Nice. Mostly of the Sheryl Crow variety. Sorry, Ted Nugent. I know that the Sheryl Crow references don't exactly hit home too good, but we'll get one. Let's just say that this Carolina game, if you have many pieces, will give you cat scratch fever. So let's move to the IDP side. Yeah, I know. Really diving pretty deep. Sorry. But so Brian Burns is a little banged up. That's a little concerning. I'm not too concerned because it's still Brian Burns. We talked about Nate Landman being out. I think that you could look. I think Caden Ellis has proven that the volume is necessary for him to put up good IDP stats. His efficiency wasn't quite there to start the season, but the volume has continued to play in his favor. What we did see at safety is that I don't know what to do with Richie Grant at all. And I still continue not to know what to do with Richie Grant because he's an enigma. Is that a fair statement?
He is. And that makes me want to think you can find somebody better. Obviously you're starting Jesse Bates, just been tearing it up, having a resurgence, leaving Cincinnati and going to Atlanta in free agency. You mentioned Caden Ellis. Mm-hmm. On the other side of the ball, you're pretty high on a Carolina Panthers interior defensive lineman.
Sure. Oh yeah, Derek Brown's stud. Derek Brown. I mean, love the matchup this week. Any matchup against Atlanta, as far as for defensive line, especially if you have a defensive tackle specifically, he's probably my defensive tackle 1 this week on that. He's really high just in my overall defensive line ranks. But you look at his ability to do twofold. If he needs to secure the edge and even establish pressures when he's outside more so than just a defensive tackle. He can do both. Having Brian Burns next over his shoulder just makes that side so nasty. But heck, look back at the last time they played, and I think we even wrote about that in our start sit column, is that he put up monster numbers, and I don't see much changing. So I'm leaning heavy on Derek Brown. And then last week was not anything either. It's not like recency bias, but he had 10 tackles. I think it's the second time he's had 10 tackles plus for a defensive tackle is incredible. Frankie Louvu, we're starting. You starting any of the safeties? You want to start Von Bell in this matchup? 40-something% box snaps last week against an Atlanta team that's probably going to run a lot. I'm saying yes.
Okay.
What do you say? You don't have to say. You don't have to follow me.
I'm looking at the box. I'm looking at the box snaps. I'm looking at the performance. The performances the past 3 weeks. What have those box snaps translated into?
Yeah, I know.
I'm not seeing him even in the top 60 in Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, so that's a little concerning there. But what does IDP really come down to for those who are new to IDP Fantasy Football? It comes down to opportunity, and opportunity can sometimes outsweigh efficiency and production, and you just want the opportunity, especially against as cliche as it sounds, division rivals, teams that know each other really well, no tendencies. That kind of helps defensive coordinators have, build up an advantage in that regard. I would not start him just because I haven't seen that opportunity translate into anything. But again, any given Sunday with Carolina here, right?
Yeah, that's true. And actually, if you look back at his last game, that same Atlanta matchup, he, granted, it was more Jeremy Chin in the box than it was Von Bell. Von Bell was playing deep a lot more, and he didn't have the best of games. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you talked me out of Von Bell. Damn it. Yep, Von Bell, you're getting moved down the line. Sorry, it is what it is. No hard feelings. But I think that wraps up that particular matchup, don't you?
Yep, I think it does.
Let's go to Tampa Bay at Green Bay. The Battle of the Bays. Green Bay's 3.5-point favorite, 42.5-point total. Actually, I think that's the highest so far of the 3 games. It is by quite a bit, at least over the last one. And I think that's what we might get. There's a lot of the people, playmaker wise, for the Green Bay side are intriguing. Christian Watson's out. AJ Dillon, who has a broken thumb, I would say doesn't play, but that hasn't been ruled out yet that I know of. Aaron Jones, from an MCL injury, is trending to play. Man, are you starting Aaron Jones if he plays?
No,
I don't want to either.
I don't want any part of that. No, I don't want any part of that. This running game, Green Bay, ironically, even because the past few seasons of success, this running back situation is just not working for either of them. It's really Green Bay has done a great job assembling a really solid wide receiving core, and they're really showing a lot of rapport with Jordan Love. I've been on the Dontavion Wicks bandwagon for a few weeks now, just hoping for that monster breakout. And it's almost like right there. The target volume has not been great. It's not even broken, I think, on average 4 or 5. But the yardage has been there. The yards after the catch have been there. He got hurt last week, though, on Monday night versus the Giants. I don't know what his status is heading into this matchup this week. But again, no Christian Watson. I would expect an uptick in his usage, but it really comes down to Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs here for Green Bay.
Yeah, exactly. I think I lean Jaden Reed first, Romeo Doubs second as far as my likely tiering of the wide receivers. And I think that's just Jaden Reed's utility all across the field. If you have both Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon banged up and or not playing. They've shown that they'll use Reed in a handful of different ways, creative wise, to get him involved. And I think that's what we'll see the same thing again. Jordan Love has been really, really solid. So I'm comfortable with Jordan Love as not my favorite QB1, but he's bottom end. Like, I'm starting Jordan Love over Baker. I'm starting Jordan Love over, any of the other options we kind of talked about earlier, which haven't been much outside of Justin Fields. So I have him at QB 11. I think that's pretty much where I'm going to keep him at the, let's see, Rachaad White last week, locked and loaded. Same thing again. I mean, he's locked in RB1, just the volume in both sides. I mean, he's the RB9 in fantasy points game right now. So it's not like we're ever going to sit Rachaad White. But the question comes down to, from the wide receiver scenario, we just talked earlier about Chris Godwin, who didn't practice Wednesday, Thursday, practiced in full on Friday, questionable. He's been blah. If you don't have to start him, I'm not starting him. Mike Evans, are you worried at all after last week?
No, I will always, especially this time of year, he always goes off for 4 touchdowns in a game. I know it
sounds about right.
But
that's fair. It's AJ Terrell, last week, and he did a great job of slowing him down, shutting him down.
Yeah. Give me all the Mike Evans here.
And then Kate Otten or Tucker Kraft.
Pass. But I have to choose one, don't I? I would probably go Kate Otten here.
Okay. See, I lean Kraft only because I see the path to the same volume that he's seen over the last couple weeks now, right there. Because I mean, you've seen almost 100% of snaps. I know that the target share is not great. It's sub 15%, but he's been a tight end one both, back-to-back weeks now. So I think that I think that continues. I don't love it, but especially if you're in a tight end premium league and you have Tucker Kraft, you're salivating, I would assume, based off of where your expectations were when you looked at the lineup going in, right?
Right. I mean, Tampa Bay does allow the 11th most fantasy points to the tight end position. Green Bay further down with 19. So I guess from that standpoint, I can understand that rationale here. But I guess my concern here with Tampa, with I guess my rationale for Kate Otten here is that, if Godwin does not do well, do we bump up in target volume for Kate Otten here?
And that's fair. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say, especially, even if he's just a decoy that is being Chris Godwin, Kate Otten, I believe that streaming option, he has 4 tight end one, weeks on the year so far. So that capability is obviously there. Threat in the red zone. So yeah, streaming option for sure. Choose your destiny with those two. I don't think that we're going to convince anybody one way or the other if they have to, but not terrible options. IDP options though. Let's start on the Green Bay side. We know that Rashawn Gary week in and week out is just one hand away from having multiple sacks almost every week. I mean, dude, he's just a monster. Last week was such a letdown. That matchup was just I don't know, a dream.
Yeah, him and Preston Smith should have had a field day.
Should have, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know. For me, Darnell Savage, at safety, go Terps, didn't practice all week, but we've seen
he returned.
He did, yes. But where I'm going with this is that we talked about on Shoot the Gap or IDP podcast that with Savage and Rudy Ford returning a couple weeks back, what was this going to do to Jonathan Owens? Well, it really hasn't done much per se, although Owens didn't exactly have a great week last week. The box snap percentages were still in Owens' favor last week, despite not really having the performance. And like we talk about with IDP, it's all about opportunity and time, space, and place. And so I think I'm going to roll here with Jonathan Owens at defensive back this week versus Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think the one person, Quay Walker's Quay's probably not playing. I think he's doubtful. He is doubtful. I don't think he plays. So I'm going to say that outside, Devondre Campbell's going to be a must start for sure. But then Isaiah McDuffie is the intriguing one. I think that if you're in a deep enough league, Isaiah McDuffie could make sense. His tackle efficiency when he's played has been great. He's been around the ball. I think Tampa, especially in this matchup, because like I said, we saw a decent scoring opportunity here. So both teams can move the ball. I think that Isaiah McDuffie could surprise this week and finishes an LB, low end LB3. You agree?
Yeah, I do. And especially helping on run support. We talked about Rachaad White, and for a good chunk of the season, Rachaad White is, 2.8 yards per carry, I think weeks 1 through 8. And then all of a sudden, you look at the past 3 weeks, 4.8 yards per carry. What gets me is that his utilization on the ground has been fantastic. He's the RB3 in rushing attempts since week 12 with 60. So plenty of opportunities for these run-stopping linebackers for the Green Bay Packers to rack up points here.
Yeah, Tampa Bay side. The big news as far as injury-wise on that is that, for me, from a real football standpoint, is that Vita Vea hasn't practiced all week. We've seen that he's been banged up. And when he's not in the lineup, opposing teams can run on Tampa a little bit more. Still not wonderfully, but he opens up so many rushing pathways and opportunities. And he's definitely a cog in that without him is big, which Devin White, who should play with or without Vita Vea, Devin White just doesn't look like Devin White. Levante Davis still looks fine. But Devin White seems to, is it lose a step? What is the reason? I don't want to point fingers and say I have an idea, but I'm pretty much out on Devin White as a recommended start. Any other starts? Antoine Winfield is a must start every week. I'm not even questioning that.
Right. No, with Vita Vea out, the rookie Kalijah Kancey, he had a sack last week. That's something, obviously. But you look at the win rate, 0. He couldn't get past his blockers. You look at the pressure rate, only 2.9%. So nobody in the interior that I would recommend here. Somebody that I really saw a good trend here, Yaya Diaby at edge. I thought he would have a great couple great matchups the past few weeks. Just hasn't been producing here as the number 2 edge rusher behind Shaq Barrett. So no, that's pretty much all for the Tampa Bay side and Green Bay, I believe.
I'll tell you a person who I like as a super deep. If you have a cornerback league that he's eligible in, and this is limited, but Christian Izien is the slot corner for Tampa, and slot corners against Green Bay have been so good. And that's a lot to do with the usage of Jaden Reed. But I think that's a spot where if you have that and you want to get a little bit of an edge, he's really high in my, if I had a cornerback ranking on the week, he's where I would lift up. But in many scoring formats and leagues, he's only safety eligible. And I don't know if I like him over a lot of the other box safeties like we typically do. But I think he's a name to pay attention to this week. And I'm not doing this just to clip it. So if he has a big week, we can go back and say, oh, look, yeah, Christian. And I don't even know if I said his name right. So that's probably not the best clip when you mispronounce his name. Shows that I don't really know anything. But all right. Ed has a question. And this is a tough one because he's the third wide receiver. And well, maybe it's not so difficult. Well, it's not Debo. What am I talking about? That's going to be Curtis Samuel, of course. Demario Douglas or Rashid Shaheed. Damn it. At first I saw that. I was like, Debo.
I literally was just pulling up Debo Samuel stats. I'm like, let me tell you how. And it's like, wait a second. Crap.
Why would it be Debo? Thank God that's an easy. That would have been easier. But what do you think, man? So, like I said earlier, I don't love Demario Douglas against what I would assume is L'Jarius and Rashid Shaheed. As much as I do like the player, I don't know how much I trust total rebound in terms of health. I know he got a full practice in Friday, back-to-back limited practices. I just don't trust that offense. I really don't this week. I'm gonna say Curtis Samuel in a shootout. I think that the likelihood that he's able to do something with it, and Terry McLaurin hasn't exactly given me concern that he could just monopolize all the targets. You're the Washington insider, as far as I'm concerned. What do you think?
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, Terry McLaurin had 0 targets, 0 receptions. It's atrocious what's going on. I agree with you, Demario Douglas. No. Shaheed, if it was any other team, any other situation weather-wise, I would, although I don't really put a lot of stat factors into weather, unless it's, just god-awful. I'd go Curtis Samuel. I think garbage time is going to be his best friend today.
Yeah, I do too. Or if it's Debo, Debo's a start for sure.
That is a must start. Absolutely.
Yep. Nate, I'm so dumb sometimes, but whatever.
I'm right there with
you. Did you say I have to agree with that?
No, I said I'm right there with you. I have no idea why I was like, ooh, let me tell you, Debo Samuel. Why would
because I don't know. It's exciting. Let's the divisional AFC South divisional game. Houston Texans. I'll say Houston Texans 3 times, and maybe Colby or Les will appear, kind of like Beetlejuice. Houston Texans at Tennessee Titans. I don't want to say Titans more than twice because maybe Hollywood will show up, and so it's pick your battle. Tennessee 3.5-point favorites, which we know the reason why. If you don't know the reason why, we'll get to that in about 5 seconds. 37.5-point total for the Houston Texans. A couple people are out, namely CJ Stroud, Nico Collins. That's pretty big on the offensive side. On the defensive side, Will Anderson and Blake Cashman are out. It's a rough day for Houston Texans, I'm going to say.
Great for IDP, though. If you have a couple studs here. I guess, should we start off with that for Texans? We'll do a little bit backward here.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Blake Cashman out. Christian Harris, just for me, just skyrockets up the board there. Yep. Will Anderson, Jonathan Grenard without Will Anderson. I'm curious what happens there. I would think that would be kind of hurting Jonathan Grenard. So I think he's moving down my rankings there just slightly. But Jalen Petrie, back from the abyss since week 10, since week 6, you go back to week 8. Let me just rattle off the points in Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. 10, 11.5, then nothing at week 10. I don't know if that was injury related, but then 10 points, 13, 11.5, 11.3. You mentioned it. This should be I'm not going to say like a full on ass whooping, but this should be very one sided. Is that the nice way of saying a full on ass whooping? So give me Petrie here with confidence, which, starting in the beginning of the season, that was not a lock, even though he finished last year as the QB1 overall. It's like, but he's been rock star.
Yeah, I agree. I worry about the lack of Will Anderson and the impact that has on Jonathan Grenard. The nice thing is they do actually still have good depth pieces. Derek Barnett and Jerry Hughes, both I think were solid yet under talked about signings and just moves that they've made over the years to solidify that defensive line. I don't think it's enough to take some of the pressure off of Grenard because Tennessee's offensive line is terrible. It wouldn't shock me at all if somebody comes through and has a decent game or at least a sack or two. And I think that it's probably going to be someone like Sheldon Rankins up the middle is if I had to guess, but I'm not going to recommend starting Sheldon Rankins at all. On the Tennessee side for IDP, We talked earlier about Azeez Al-Shaair. And I think that so there's no Jeffrey Simmons. That's a huge loss. I think that's probably bigger for the Houston running game that they're going to want to establish. I'll let you determine which one that's going to be, because I don't want any piece of trying to forecast that play calling. But we talked about Azeez Al-Shaair, but I want to talk about Harold Landry and Danico Autry and maybe Arden Key. I don't know which one's going to show up any given week, because Harold Landry looks, 1 week he'll have the 7 pressures and really look the part. And then the next week he'll have 1 pressure. And I go back to thinking he's still not 100% recovered from the surgery. What do you think of that particular grouping?
So let's take last week versus Miami out of here, where he had 3 sacks. That's definitely an anomaly, right?
Right.
Compared to, his random 2 or 1 sack showing. One of the things, and again, I keep harping this. I like my edge rushers who have a little bit of an elevated tackle floor, just because that bumps up their fantasy floor. And then you hit home with a sack, or a half a sack, or you have a 3-sack day. I mean, you're in the 20s in points in terms of production. But going back to week 11, 6 tackles, okay, but then 3, and then 8 in week 13, and then 5, and then no sacks. And like he in terms of IDP points per game, you look at the average using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, 7.5, 3.8, 11. Last week is 26.3. So that being the case, I do like the matchup here for Landry. I do like the past 2 weeks' performances, because of the tackle numbers have been there. But man, Danico Autry, he is somebody not to be messed around with, also for IDP purposes. But I think I'm rolling the hot hand here with Landry.
Yeah, I have a hard time wanting to start anybody or sit everybody. It's Houston. The tricky part with Houston is that what they've done from an offensive line standpoint, as far as like efficiency, it really, and I feel like I talk about this every week, is if you look at the first, let's say, 9 weeks of the season, they were doing a really, really good job of protection. They were the 6th best. So PFF has an overall pass blocking efficiency grade, and that kind of takes into account the total number of dropbacks with the total number of pressures, sacks, etc. And that's what it takes a look at. And so that gives you an overall or an overarching kind of theme for how they've done. That was through the first 9 weeks of the season, relatively, or actually really good, top 6. And then you take a look at the past now, and they're bottom 10. So it's really switched around, and it makes me want to look at a Tennessee like a Harold Landry. But there's reservations in there. If you're looking for a splash, big upside, I think that's where I am okay with Landry, and just assuming that it's going to be that huge upside. That's the tricky part, Jorge.
I will say, from weeks 12 through 14, in terms of defensive lineman points per game, at 8, DL8 and DL9, you have 2 Titans back-to-back, Jeffrey Simmons and Danico Autry. A little bit more consistent there, producers, with 12.7 and 12.8 points respectively. So would you agree that maybe they provide a little bit more stable floor, and Landry's more the boom play there?
Well, I normally would, but that's the problem, is that Jeffrey Simmons is out. So Jeffrey Simmons, I think he does more for Danico Autry, who also Danico Autry he didn't practice twice this week and got a limited practice on Thursday, and he has a knee injury. So I think that if we're going to lean somewhere, the only person that's even healthy, and I don't think as reliant upon Jeffrey Simmons, which is a crazy thing to say, but that's, Harold Landry is much more wide 9 type athletic ability, more so than Danico Autry is. But we'll see. maybe I'm hoping that I don't have to start Danique Autry in anything outside of like some best ball leagues where I don't have to actually make that decision. So let's talk about some decisions though. Some on the offensive side of the ball.
Sure.
Case Keenum is in for Houston. CJ Stroud, Nico Collins are both out. You're looking at the offensive playmakers for Houston. I think, is it fair to say that Dameon Pierce is a never start going forward? I mean, the unpredictability, he's less than 20% snaps in multiple weeks now over the last couple. What do you have last week? 7 total yards. I can't trust that. So Devin Singletary. On the other side, though, what did we just say? Tennessee's missing Jeffrey Simmons. They're kind of banged up outside of Jeffrey Simmons too, in the aforementioned Danique Autry. Jack Gibbons is their LB2 who has a back injury, who didn't practice, got limited practices in. And then you go even deeper and you look at someone like Kayvon Wallace, who is questionable. He got in limited practices and he should play, but we're at Devin Singletary.
Yeah, I think game script is going to favor Singletary. So if I had to pick a running back here for Houston, it would be Singletary. And I don't trust. Man, if Stroud was playing and no Nico, Noah Brown just jumps up for me in terms of a receiving option. But I don't know what to make of Case Keenum. I'm fading everybody really on offense. Even the tight end matchup is bad for Dalton Schultz, who should be coming back this week. Even if he's supposed to sign with Brevin Jordan, that makes it even worse. So for me, it really is Devin Singletary for the Texans on offense that gives me the most confidence.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man. And the Titans have what I think is a couple options. Derrick Henry, you're going to start. This is the time of year. I mean, Derrick Henry, that's why if you could make it to the playoffs with Derrick Henry, congratulations, because it hasn't exactly been the easiest road. But now's when you get paid for having Derrick Henry, because typically as it gets colder, he gets more dangerous. And we've seen him ramp up a little bit. It's kind of bounced back and forth because there's some weeks where Tajay Spears is more involved than people wanted him to be, but
right.
He's explosive. And that's what his explosiveness though doesn't hurt Derrick Henry in terms of what Derrick Henry is going to do best, which is get inside the goal, in the red zone and be a touchdown maker. And that's what you're hoping for in this situation here. I had my spiel on DeAndre Hopkins. I have him, I almost want to put him as a wide receiver 1 just because I love the matchup so much. But let's talk about Chigakonkwo. He's starting to get a lot more play. And now the reports out of Tennessee are that Nick Westbrook-Akini couldn't practice Friday, didn't look good yesterday from an illness standpoint. Illness is always tricky, but without Westbrook-Akini, Treylon Burks is nothing to me personally. But is Chig going to be that tight end, that has that big week this week to help some fantasy rosters?
You look back to week 12, 5 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets. Yeah, I think in terms of the number 2 passing option, I think Will Levis will zero in. He has been zeroing in on Chig. It's just, we're missing the touchdowns. We're missing those points there in the red zone. So, given what you just mentioned about the wide receiver or lack of depth there or performance, I'm pretty. I look at it like this. I like Chig over Dalton Schultz in this matchup.
Perfect. Good morning, Chandler. Chandler wants to know: do you start? Oh, this is this. I will admit, I never expected 15 weeks ago that I would even give this consideration or consultation. Brock Purdy or Josh Allen? I mean, how do you not start Josh Allen? Is Brock Purdy one of the few that you can make an exception for, or you just start your studs in any given matchup?
So first of all, before I answer that question, I don't know if you watch or seen clips of Get Up, the ESPN show with Mike Greenberg.
Oh, I did. Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Where he goes ballistic on one of the people who writes the questions for the show, because one of the questions was, Who wrote this question? Who wrote, will Josh Allen have more turnovers than touchdowns this week? That is so disrespectful to Josh Allen. You know what? No, it's not. It's not, to be honest with you. I guess it's a little disrespectful. I found it mostly funny. But that being the case, Dallas is one of the best defenses. Their pass rush is one of the most elite. Hankins is out, I believe, but whatever. At the end of the day, I really believe Micah Parsons is going to be all over Josh Allen, and I actually like the matchup better for Purdy. So give me Purdy. I like Purdy over Josh Allen, and I understand the rushing upside is there with Josh Allen. I get it, but give me the high-powered offense here with the San Francisco 49ers.
That's it. Yeah, I have such a hard time.
This is a good problem to have, by the way. Like, I don't think you go wrong with either of these quarterbacks, but for me, my preference would be probably Purdy.
Yeah, because I'm gonna lean with Allen still, just because even in the worst games for Josh Allen, which granted week 1 was the worst game, but that was, again, at New York, everything against the Jets. Outside of that, he's only had 2 weeks where he's finished outside as even a QB 8 overall, QB 9. And that is, like you said, the rushing upside does help, but he has 10 rushing touchdowns on the season. And I know that's not a likely to continue type thing. You never want to bank on the rushing touchdowns, but it's just that solid floor, especially in playoff time. And I don't think it's getting cute with going with Purdy. Let's not get misunderstood here, is that the last 5 weeks, he has, 4 top 6 finishes, and then a QB 23, which that's my concern. Is I've seen a handful. We've seen about 7 performances where he's finished outside of the top 13, 14. That's a great decision. Great problem to have. Choose who you want. It's a championship game too. Why would you? I don't care if you end early or not. I have no problem with that. That gives you 2 weeks just to watch football and not stress. But
I would recommend, even though I would never take this advice because I just can't. Put down your phone if you're strong enough, if you're stronger than I am, and just enjoy this game, this slate of games today. Don't do that.
That's stupid. What the hell are you doing? Keep your phone in your face the entire time. Watch every point, live and die. And just keep the Tums by the side of the table, or beer or water, milk, whatever you prefer to drink or not drink. But he has one more aspect to that we have to make sure, because this is championship week. Titans, Chiefs, or Rams defense, 6-point passing touchdown, by the way, for the Purdy Josh Allen. So I don't think that changes my opinion as much. But what do you think?
I go Chiefs. Go with the Chiefs Kingdom here. Just under decimation of New England.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Agree.
That's the analysis. Just utter decimation by Kansas City.
It will be. It will be. New England's losing. All right. Travis Etienne, James Cook, or Zay Flowers for your flex. I eliminate Etienne from this one just because I've seen this downward trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
James Cook has a harder matchup, if you ask me, between him and Zay. But James Cook's involvement has just been egregious over the last 3 weeks. I have to start James Cook here. What about you?
That's such a great question. I just want to check one thing because I think I'm leaning Zay. I'm leaning Zay. You look at the past couple of weeks, the target volume, 8 targets, 10 targets last week. He's getting more involved as Beckham is going. So is Zay Flowers. I think Lamar Jackson and the play calling with Monken, they're starting to turn it on. They're finding balance. It was interesting. They were kind of, a little bit more pass heavy than run heavy to start the season. And then you saw more conservative play calling. Then Mark Andrews goes down. and we still saw some conservative play calling, and the defense was really carrying. But now we're seeing, the passing volume starting to go up for these wide receivers. I think I'm rolling with Zay. I'm going to go with Zay here.
We are a lot of help.
We're giving you options, folks. We're giving you options here.
Exactly. All right.
Options.
Good morning,
Evan.
Evan.
Let's see here. Choose 2 half PPR, second round of the playoffs. Thielen versus Atlanta. Samuel versus the Rams. Shaheed versus the Giants. I'm crossing off Thielen here for me personally. So it really comes down to Shaheed.
Yeah, I don't think I'm crossing off Thielen completely. I think I'm going to go Thielen and Curtis Samuel. Thielen's volume will be there.
Right.
Yes, choose 2. I just, I don't love Thielen's matchup, but I like Thielen's likelihood to have 20% target share and translate that into at least a solid floor. If you're shooting for upside, I think Shaheed and Samuel are the better options for true upside, but I'll go with some stability with Thielen myself, but I'll let you do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna go Samuel because of garbage time. I think that's just playing from garbage time. So I think I'm gonna go Shaheed versus the Giants here.
Noah Olave makes sense. I have no problem. Yeah. I like Rashid Shaheed. I really do.
Yeah. I got a question here back from Chandler. Mm-hmm. Still like the Chiefs with Texans having Nico. Dallas. Well, the Chiefs are taking on Patriots.
Yeah.
So not the Texans here. Then we go to Ted.
Well, hold on. What? Go back to that. What are you saying?
He's still like Chiefs with Texans having Nico, Dell, and Stroud out.
Yeah, what he's saying is that's why he was thinking he wants the Tennessee Titans because he's playing that. Yeah, no, So okay. I still like the Chiefs despite the matchup that Tennessee has. I think that it's a great matchup for Tennessee. I think both are good options, but me personally, New England is going to be Trent Brown, offensive tackle, most likely out. If that's the case, it really helps boost the upside for Karlaftis and Chris Jones. We've seen the pressure when it gets to whomever in New England can just force the big play for KC. That's my opinion. I don't think either Houston nor New England score more than 17. So I think both are going to have the points in the yardage. I think the big splash plays happen as a result from Kansas City much more than Tennessee. Kansas City has bigger splash options on defense. Sorry to interrupt you there, Jorge. I just want to make sure that I had read that and figured it out. I solved the puzzle.
There you go. And Malcolm, going back to his ETN Cook or Zay Flowers question, said he also has Jerome Ford. Okay, so then for me, I would go Ford, Flowers, Cook, ETN.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go Cook, Flowers, Ford, ETN.
There you go.
Totally. Zero help whatsoever.
Zero help. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Malcolm.
Yeah, exactly. On to the next stream that has other people hopefully helping you more than us. Where are we at in the games right now? We got the Houston, Tennessee. We pretty much had discussed all the passing options. Let's move to the next game, which is the New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins. I just got a report just recently that Tyreek Hill had no apparent limp. Looks like he should be good to go. I didn't expect him to miss anyway. It was his decision. And with his decision and the 2,000 yard looming, there was no way in my eyes that he was going to sit. Let's get to Tyreek Hill, though, real quick. What do you think matchup wise? I know that it's not going to be just Tyreek against Sauce. I think we know. You're starting Tyreek no matter what. Jalen Waddle, though, has been kind of an enigma as far as wanting to start week in and week out. Me personally, that is, because what I've seen is wide receiver finishes of over the last, we'll say, month and a half. 33, 33, 13, 34, 19. He hasn't had a week 1 wide receiver finish since week 8. He's only had 2 really top 24 performances in the last 6 weeks. So are you comfortable with Jalen Waddle against this New York Jets stifling defense?
I am. We go back to week 11, 8 targets, 8 targets, 8 targets, 8 targets, 55, 114 against said New York Jets for 15.4 half PPR points. I'm okay with Waddle just because I've seen the production versus New York in this defense. So, and the target volume, I just like the target volume. We talk, Tyreek should be good to go, but like, how much is this injury going to affect him? I understand he's cleared to play, but I think that's a big difference from saying, oh, well, he's completely pervious to pain, ready to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. There's that's been my dilemma with Waddle is I know the upside and I want to see the upside. I just hadn't seen enough of it. But where you have them, I mean, you're not gonna not start Jalen Waddle in 9 times out of 10. There's a chance, but let's not assume that. So quarterback, we know it's Tua. We're fine with Tua unless you have the matchup from earlier where it was Tua and Fields. If you have one of those situations, obviously that's conditional. The running back situation. Go ahead.
So I don't know how happy I am with Tua. I think he had 7 fantasy points versus the Jets last week, and that's with a healthy offensive line. We saw, I believe, one of their interior offensive linemen for the Dolphins. He's now on IR. He got injured last week. So part of me is concerned about that defensive interior, a la Quinnen Williams, that maybe Quinnen Williams doesn't actually get double teamed now, or he can beat his, the backup of the offensive lineman who went down, whose name is escaping me for the Miami Dolphins. And that could maybe put a little bit more heat on Tua this week. So I'm a little concerned there. And again, the 7-point performance doesn't help matters either. So, but given, again, we've said this all morning, given who you have left to choose from, you're going with the potential explosive offense here.
Tua or Trevor Lawrence?
Trevor Lawrence.
Against Baltimore?
Yes.
Really? Oh, see, yeah. I would not. With that banged up, I still don't trust the ankle. I think but there you go. That's a. I don't know if that's a decision people are going to have to make. How about Tua versus Kyler? Tua or Kyler versus San Francisco?
Kyler rushing upside.
Okay, all right. That's those 3 I have. Boom, 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 and I don't like any. I wouldn't love to have any one of those 3. I'm much happier having some of the lucky names that I may have. Doesn't matter what I have, it's what other people have, which is decisions to make. Let's see if you have a decision between, let's say you have Breece Hall or Raheem Mostert. What's your, where's your take on both, I guess? You don't have to pit them against each other. But Breece Hall, has been, I don't know what the best adjective to describe Breece Hall is. If you had to think of one in one word, is it confusing? Is it disappointing? Is it?
It's disappointing. It's very disappointing. We knew. Let me choose my words carefully. Coming off of the ACL, they signed Dalvin Cook. It was supposed to be that let's ease Breece Hall into productivity. And then you head into week 5 versus Denver. The coach is like, oh, we're taking the training wheels off Breece Hall. We're going to let him go. Boom, 22 rushing attempts, 177 yards, close to 27 fantasy points and half PPR. All right, fantastic. His total attempts since then, 12, 12, 16, 13, 10, 7, 13, 10. That doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence. Versus you look at how well Raheem Mostert's been playing. We saw him score those 2 touchdowns, close to the goal line last week. They trust him in scoring situations. Devon Achane is banged up, or Chan, excuse me. So, yeah, I feel more comfortable with Mostert than Breece Hall.
Gotcha. Not news. We'll obviously talk about this in the Philadelphia game, but I got a report just now that came across that there's even less optimism that Jalen Hurts on Monday night plays because his sickness or his illness has progressed or worsened overnight. And so being a Monday night game, if Jalen Hurts managers are going to have to make some decisions and what you do. Obviously, if you want to pivot and you want to take a look and out there at the waiver wire, it's not wonderful to have to look and say, man, what do you do? Do you look at Drew Lock if available? It's pretty ugly. And that's what I'm literally doing right now. But that's assuming that Geno plays. There's a lot of decisions to be made right now there. We talked about the decision between Breece Hall, Raheem Mostert. I think that Mostert is in play. I think you've gotten this far with him. I think the biggest question mark is, like you said, with Chan. And I pivot even further on this game, and I look at a situation. It's Garrett Wilson. I mean, volume play all season. Is he? He's quarterback proof for the most part, right?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. The targets, it's just targets. And if you're in a full PPR league, you have somehow weathered this storm with both of the quarterbacks the Jets have been starting, Zach Wilson, and insert name that I can't even remember. And the Jets, quite frankly, the Jets don't even remember because they let him go a couple weeks ago. So, Garrett Wilson, hands down, I would play this week.
Yeah, right there. No tight ends that I'm wanting to start. I have to start one, not happily, but it is what it is, and I will progress. I won't go anything from there. So yeah, more notes on the Eagles, of course, to come later as we discuss them. Let's move to the IDP side of this matchup. Let's start with the Minnesota side, Miami side. My apologies. The interior offensive line against the interior defensive line is a matchup that I think is going to be exploitable. Christian Wilkins, a somewhat banged Zach Seiler. I think both are, especially defensive tackle leagues. I love both of those matchups. I don't know. Do you have a league that you play that's defensive tackle specific?
I do a couple, like, what do you call it? The IDP Oasis that Gary Davenport put together, or the IDP Brouhaha league Gary Davenport put together. Yeah, so definitely that. Just, speaking of Zach Seiler, we go back again, week 12 through 14. He's the defensive lineman overall, 4 in total points scored, which is crazy, and number 10 overall in points per game. So that interesting.
Yeah, stuff. I mean, a pick 6 or a fumble recovery for touchdown too. That doesn't hurt, but still, he's been a force on the outside. The one thing that I know I want to watch is Andrew Van Ginkel's health. He's been an oblique injury.
Yeah. Which on the flip side, we look at Andrew Van Ginkel and the potential he's had. We saw, and the potential is warranted, and the hype is warranted. We saw what he did when he took on the starting role with Jalen Phillips earlier in the year. Jalen Phillips coincidentally, tore his Achilles against the Jets the day after Thanksgiving. Van Ginkel comes in, hadn't exactly been as dominant as he had been earlier in the year, but given this injury here with Van Ginkel, one of your guys, Bradley Chubb, has definitely the potential. He has definitely the tackle for. He's somebody who I'm really excited about and really excited researching it heading into the off season when we start doing, Dynasty, IDP stuff and whatnot and so forth. Any thoughts you want to share with Bradley Chubb and just his potential for this matchup here?
Oh, well, it goes hand in hand with the Jets offensive line. They've been woeful all season. There's the likelihood that somebody, if not multiple people from Miami, have impact games is pretty good. Bradley Chubb coming off the edge. Bradley Chubb, though, if you look at the last really 4 weeks worth of playing time, has been unlucky at best. I mean, there's only really one game. If go back, say, heck, you have to go back to week 1 when he didn't record a pressure. You have to go back almost a month plus to where he didn't have at least 3 or 4 pressures, and the sacks just haven't been there. You look at the last 4 weeks, and he has a combined 21 pressures, no sacks in that time. But the tackle volume, which you do like, has been supported. You know, you see a 6 tackle performance, another 6 tackle performance. So it's not like it's, you know, bust proof to start Bradley Chubb. I got to tell you, I think the likelihood that you get positive return is better for me than Andrew Van Ginkel this week with an oblique injury. So yeah, Bradley Chubb is definitely one of my must starts this week. Linebacker's the intriguing part though too. That's my spot where I'm not 100% certain, because last week when Jerome Baker was placed on the IR, we knew that it was going to have impact across the line. I thought what that meant is that, David Long is going to have 100% of snaps. He's going to have, 15% of the tackles, and he saw less than 90%. He still saw 88%, so he's fine. But the fact that Duke Riley led the backfield or led the linebacking room was a little, not about concerning, just odd. But I still like David Long. I don't know. I'll tell you, against the Jets, I'm not fascinated starting too many IDP options like just against the Jets outside of defensive line. Am I crazy?
No, not at all. I think the floor and the upside is there most confidently with the defensive line players for the Dolphins. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, just the Jets as a whole, well, they probably 28th. Yeah, 28th against linebackers and scoring. Allow few, just a low amount of tackles to the opposing team. The Jets just an avoid. But the Dolphins, though, Deshaun Elliott, defensive back, is out for this game. Is Javon Holland, and that's about it for you?
Yeah, and I want to have people temper their expectations for Javon Holland. Everybody's going to look back and look at, the last time they played the Jets and like, oh, he had so many fantasy points. It was in the 20s plus. Let's temper that. A lot of that was due to a touchdown that was a kickoff or a touchdown or a pick six or anyhow. I wouldn't use that as your floor. But, you look at box snaps since week 12, they've been up there. So, yeah, I think Javon Holland, and that's pretty much all I would feel comfortable starting.
Yeah, wait, no, not Javon. Javon Holland is I'm sorry. I meant to say without Javon Holland, because I think he is.
Holland is out?
That's an if. That's an if, because the MCL injury, he's been limited all week. So I don't want to say what I was going with is, if Javon Holland and you have no Deshaun Elliott, a name that we had talked about in the past over the years is Brandon Jones.
Yeah.
Brandon Jones. I just don't love Brandon Jones. I just don't love I don't like safeties against the Jets either. If they're bad against the linebacker, they're bad against the safety position, let's just avoid. I'm going to put my stamp and say I'm avoiding Miami linebackers and safeties in this matchup. Do I get your agree?
Yeah, we're good. Got a couple of comments here from Dylan. Dylan, what's up, dude?
What up?
Happy playoffs. Happy playoffs to you. He's got a couple of questions here. Hello. All full PPR. Pick 2. Pollard at Buffalo, Jaden Reed at Tampa, Cook at Dallas. For me,
start there. Yeah, pick 2.
Jaden Reed, James Cook.
Man, Tony Pollard has been so much better as of late. That offense is, someone brought up an interesting thought process for Dallas is that maybe the reason Tony Pollard didn't get the play earlier in the season is because Dallas knew that no matter how good Tony Pollard was, if Dak wasn't doing Dak things or what Dak needed to do to move that team, they weren't going anywhere. So they said, maybe it was, let's get Dak rolling And then by integration, Tony Pollard will then get more usage and will be more valuable down the stretch. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I like it. And by that reasoning, I'm going to go with Tony Pollard and James Cook. I love Jaden Reed, but do I want both running backs in that matchup? Ugh, I don't think that should matter. It shouldn't matter. I'm going to stick with it.
Okay. We'll go to then pick one, Jalen Waddle versus the Jets or Jaden Reed versus Tampa Bay. For me, I want to go Waddle. I'm going to go Waddle for the reasons we were talking about just a little bit ago. Just you saw the production versus New York. We've seen the target volume, 8 targets, I believe, the past 4 weeks. Just trust in where the ball's going.
Yeah.
Even though Jaden Reed is not a horrible play either. I like the upside for Waddle though versus Reed.
Yeah, I have both of them as a wide receiver 2 this week. I do have Waddle a few spots higher, so I'll go Waddle. And then defense. So Tennessee versus Houston. We talked earlier about Stroud, Nico, less team. Houston Saints against the Giants, who were pitiful except for last week, which was probably a blow your load moment for Tommy DeVito and Giants fans. And then Baltimore against Jacksonville, which I was worried about a hobbled Trevor Lawrence. I think this is the Titans matchup of these 3 teams for me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. No Stroud, Case Keenum starting that offensive line, just not awesome. It's a nice way. Yeah, give me the Titans here. And he has one more. Pick one. James Conner versus San Fran. Jerome Ford versus Chicago. Singletary versus Tennessee. CEH versus New England. Let me ask you a question as a Chiefs fan.
Uh-huh.
Why the hype? We all know it's McKinnon, right? That's the running back that they choose, right? Like, why is CEH entering people's radar all of a sudden?
I don't know if it is. No, I think it's. I mean, he's been the first hand when it's gone to him, really, to start off. I mean, they had CEH outsnapped McKinnon last week. He had more. It was 65% rush attempts for CEH last week, 24 for McKinnon, and they had the same number of target percentage at 11%.
So just McKinnon was lucky enough just to get into the end zone versus CEH. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, and that's why people, myself included, I think that the likelihood is this: no matter the game script, McKinnon has a higher ceiling. No matter the game script, CEH has the, I think, more stable floor. I think it's just his usage will be there. I don't start him versus New England over Devin Singletary or Jerome Ford, so I take Singletary in this matchup.
Yep, 100%. Just the game script, the passing, the dumping it off there quickly.
No Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah, exactly. We got. I am trying to figure out what this name is. Inflective 2K. Am I saying that right? Am I inflective?
Yeah, inflective.
2K. Inflective. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Brees Hall, Zeke, DeAndre Swift, Antonio Gibson start 2. For me, it would be Gibson, and given what we're hearing about with potentially no Jalen Hurts against Seattle next week, give me Swift. So I'd go Gibson, Swift, Zeke, then Brees is how I would rank that.
Yeah, that one's tough because Swift has been so bad the last couple weeks.
But with no Hurts, right? The volume they have to play offense somehow. They have to be able to.
And I'm not trying to build up Marcus Mariota's value. It's still Marcus Mariota, but I will say Swift. And the next one's tough because Zeke's volume should be excellent. And I trust his volume. I trust his volume more than I trust Antonio Gibson's volume, because despite what we have both said, and that we think the Rams should win enough that Gibson's value could be more uplifted, he's also a fumble away from not touching the field like he did, because last week that fumble. But I don't want to bank on a fumble. That's a terrible way to approach. I can't believe I'm saying Zeke, but I'm gonna go Zeke and Swift. That's a this by far, that was the most difficult one because I see a path to high ceiling, no floor for like almost all of them if the situation goes awry. But good luck in Flextive. Hopefully pull this one out, brother or sister.
There you go. Now let's go to the Giants and the Saints here.
Chris Battistel did say Olavi is confirmed out, just so people know.
Perfect timing as we're just getting into that. So for me, Raheed Shaheed bumps up a bunch. Feeling confident with him. You mentioned earlier Darren Waller set to return. Is Darren Waller returning here? What does that mean to you? Does that mean anything to you right now, or is it just like a body?
It makes. I mean, I think that he replaces a lot of the super bottom of the tier that I don't want to mess with. Like, in all reality, bottom tier, I mean like really the tight end 15 to 20, because I'm not starting him over. Let's start at like near the top. Not starting him over Ingram, Kittle, McBride, Njoku, Ferguson, likely, Goddard, Komet. I think this is where it starts. I think you get to the area where I'm at, like with Okonkwo, Logan Thomas, Hunter Henry, Tyler Conklin, Tucker Kraft, that range. He's right in there. And I know the upside is higher, but there's a chance for zero. I have him as a low end tight end 2 right now. What do you have?
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
All right, let's. So we're starting Wan'Dale Robinson, right? I mean, are we convinced here that this guy just had his breakout game last week and he's just going to be the target monster, or do you think Waller kind of like helps, but hurts Wan'Dale in terms of his target? Share last week.
I don't trust Wan'Dale because the week before that, the narrative going into this last week's game was, did Jalen Hyatt have his breakout, and is he now going to be there? And we saw him. Jalen Hyatt played a heavy percentage, 85% route participation, only had 14% targets, but he ran more routes than Wan'Dale did. But Wan'Dale saw such a huge target share that it's got to go down. I don't like any of them. I don't think I would start Hyatt. I wouldn't start Wan'Dale. I wouldn't start Waller if I didn't have to. But he's
Saquon, basically.
Saquon. I think Waller has the best. If Waller plays the whole game, I think Waller could probably lead that team in receiving. But I don't trust the offense to do much. Like I said, I think they overperformed last week by quite a bit. So I'm pretty much doing Saquon, and that's it.
Speaking of switching to the Saints, I mean, obviously, God, I saw this one tweet from, first of all, hello, Riveroo. We'll get to IDP in a second. Did you see that tweet that NFL Fantasy put out where it was like, Alvin Kamara minus this yardage, yet got 1.9 points? Like, it just, and sorry for pissing off people in the chat here. I hate PPR with a passion, just for the fact that people can have negative plays on the field yet get positive points. Like, I don't get it. I get it. We all like high volume points. Nobody likes to see a 79 to 60 fantasy win, but I don't know. I guess that's why we like talking about. I like talking about half PPR. But anyhow, that's my little rant.
No, it's not. It's warranted. Week 1, I believe it was week 1. We saw the play that sticks in my head is, and it's not the exact same, but it's very similar in that I think it was CJ Stroud that was, the pass was tipped back and he caught it and ran for like a yard. And basically they said it was a terribly stupid play to catch the pass. You should have just knocked it back down and never tried to receive it. But he gained more than a person who ran for 9 yards on 3rd and 8 and, secured the game or whatever. You can't put game implications into fantasy scoring. I wish you could. It would be very involved and it would be, I'm sure, incredibly cool. But But no, rant is warranted. I think the majority feel the same way, but people do like points. So let's go to the Saints.
Yeah.
We're not starting Derek Carr. We know that.
No.
We are starting Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
Chris Olave's out. So like you said, Shaheed does move up. I was still worried about him coming back after being limited all week. I think that there's a definite boom upside there. Let's go with Taysom Hill, though, because that's been the question that we've gotten a lot of. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to start Taysom Hill if you have him as your tight end. I don't know. You know, if you had Taysom Hill and you were using Taysom Hill for your fantasy tight end position, and then you were able to pick up Darren Waller, you know, because somebody dropped him because he'd been on IR, and you know, man, I just gave myself a very difficult start sit question. I think I'd still roll Taysom Hill. I you know, just the productivity has been there, the usage has been there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's sums up. And I don't worry, don't get me wrong. There's reason to be concerned with Taysom Hill as well when he doesn't practice all week, basically missed last week's game with multiple issues, hand and foot. And then he's active. He doesn't need much to be hyper productive. We know that. I mean, 4 touches and a guy could have 2 touchdowns and a passing touchdown. It's just one of those, you know, he's just that type of person that he can win you the week. And given I would say the scope of the tight end position, the good news is this, and it sounds terrible to say, but if you get a 2 or a 3-point performance out of Taysom Hill, since it's the tight end position, as long as it's not like tight end premium where you're going up against 18 to 20 point averages, you're not going to crush yourself. You know what I mean? It's like if you lose to the tight end 5, it's the tight end 5 might score 11 points. So right. It's like you net gain of 10 points or whatever versus like your wide receiver 1 puts up a dud. Terrible analysis, but that makes me feel better starting Taysom Hill and not getting it. But yeah, Ruger says it might be the only way to beat the Giants, which is, can you believe that just left your mouth, but left your fingertips where you think that having Taysom Hill the only way to beat the Giants, but it is a bad matchup. It's not a great game. Let's talk about the IDP side, Jorge. With the Giants, what we've seen is, I think I'm going to say it's inconsistency across IDP as a whole. I haven't seen one specific person in a given week that I feel extremely comfortable starting or recommending. Like Kayvon Thibodeau has great weeks. And then last week you look at his pressure rate and his win rate, but he was on the field for almost 100% of snaps. So Kayvon Thibodeau volume wise, I'm okay with. Bobby Okereke, is Jason Pinnock someone you would start?
Yes.
Me too.
Yeah. I think he would be. I'm trying to remember. Did I read it? I don't think I read about him in the waiver. Yeah, I do like this. I think I like him coming down and helping out closer to the line of scrimmage, even though we've seen Xavier McKinney have more of the box snaps, but I think Pinnock can play a little bit more of a role in coverage this week. What I'm trying to say is I think he's more multifaceted than Xavier McKinney and has been somewhat more productive than Xavier McKinney. So if I had to choose one, I would go Pinnock in this particular matchup.
Yeah. And surprisingly, I was just looking at the points allowed and whatnot. You would need Kayvon Thibodeau to play the entire amount because the Saints have allowed the least points to the opposing defensive in position, but they have been pretty generous to both linebackers and safeties. So I agree with that. Or give me some New Orleans start sit type.
Yeah. So I love Carl Granderson. You know, whenever guys hear Rhett Manuel did a IDP target piece on him in August. We've been hyping him up all season. Just the guy, you know, he has blow up games, but he's also very steady and consistent. His win rate is pretty solid for the season. So I love him there. DeMario Davis. There was a play last week where the quarterback dropped back, and then he's waiting and waiting and waiting, and Demario Davis is like sitting there, and he's like, there's a big hole along the offensive line, and he's just sitting in that gap, and he's like waiting and waiting. It's almost like he's like, all right, I'm going to give you like a 10-second head start, and then I'm coming after you. And then after that 10-second head start was done, he just went from 0 to 60 and like leveled the quarterback. It was the most beautiful hit I'd seen in all season. Next to Jabril Peppers getting Devontae Adams way back when. So definitely him. Is Werner should be back right this week? I believe he had been dealing with an injury recently. If so, I would definitely roll with Pete Werner and both Demario Davis there and Carl Granderson for the Saints.
Yeah, Carl Granderson is a beast. Like you mentioned, preseason was a hype. I would say hype target of all of ours, or at least for Rhett, and then me subsequently as a result, because you guys basically not convinced me, but you gave every reason to support it, and you convinced me because he has been fantastic, and thankfully many of us have him. But that's it. Oh wait, does it say Hill just announced as inactive? Whoa,
Taysom Hill just got in it.
Which one, Taysom or Tyreek?
Yeah, what are we talking about here? Let's go.
Tyreek Hill is inactive today.
Wow. Well, okay.
That is crazy. So, yeah, Jalen Waddle definitely takes a big, I would say, step in the positive direction. And is there another massive player, like receiver wise, who would be the next person up for you if you could consider, or do you even look that far down the line? Do you think that it's Cedric Wilson, Braxton Berrios? Don't say River Craycraft or Robbie Chosen. I'm gonna say Cedric Wilson. Okay, yeah. Well, there's the answer right there. When we both say unconfidently two other players, and then someone's going to throw in Durham Smythe, and it's just, I think it's the Jets, and I think it's an avoid. I think it's not worth, just because targets and opportunity could open up doesn't mean they're targets and opportunity that you should target. So, yeah. Now as a payback, thank you, Let's Go, by the way, for announcing that. Wow. It's big. Ruguru, fire up Achan, and it's like, you got to get, as many good, healthy bodies, and healthy might be a stretch, but the bodies that are capable of explosive plays on the field, maybe we'll see more Mostert and Achane. I might keep saying his name separately every time because it's Achan, and I hear different inflections at different points. But yeah, Tyreek being out is crazy. They said no limp either earlier, hyping it all up about how good he looked walking, but fucking walking. Let's chill out. Wow.
That's crazy breaking news right there for those who are just tuning in. Tyreek Hill is inactive for this game versus the New York Jets at home. All right, let's go to your game, and then my game back to back, because one has a positive spin on it. Yours, mine, not so much. Let's go KC at New England -8.5, 37.5. No Pacheco, no Ramondre. We talked about the upside play with McKinnon, with the floor with CEH, and then I'm surprised we haven't talked about more of the utter resurgence of Zeke last week versus Pittsburgh. Do you see that happening again this week versus Kansas City?
I do. I think that just the volume is going to be king. And don't get me wrong, KC's done a good job against opposing running backs for the most part. James Cook, we saw last week, start off extremely hot, and then as the game went on, they had to go elsewhere because they put the clamps down a little bit. But there's nobody else really outside of Zeke that I think New England's going to have to focus on. or it will focus on, and we saw that last week. 91% of the snaps, 96% rush attempts, a true bell cow, and his usage out of the backfield has been very encouraging. Not just last week, but for the past 2 weeks now, he's had a 21% and a 31% target share over those two. So I think that volume will be there. I don't know if that means it's going to be I don't want to predict an RB1 week or anything, but I do think that he will have a very solid week for people that have luckily had him on their team going into the playoffs. But that's the only person on that team that I would even play.
Now we know Belichick's, MO for all defensive matchups, take away your best player. So obviously that means for Kansas City, take away Travis Kelce. Rashee Rice, hands down, wide receiver one, not even in question, not even. He's arrived for Kansas City. Yes, no.
Like the wide receiver one in Kansas City, or you're not saying a fantasy wide receiver one?
No, yes, just for Kansas City.
Yeah, absolutely. He's number one. He's number one option. He's the number one receiving option in Kansas City right now. He has been for the past few weeks, really on the season, because other teams' ability to slow / try to shut down Kelce. And it's worked. There's the different type of bracket coverages and different things they're shading towards him, and they've done a really good job of keeping that at bay. I don't love any other player in this matchup besides Kelce and Rashee Rice. I know that I don't be shocked in the least if we don't see Kadarius Toney. And I know it sounds weird, but I think that we will see 6 or 7 targets to Kadarius Toney this week. I think they'll use him in the backfield. I think they'll get him involved with the ball in his hands, because if you watched him with the ball in his hands, he's been fantastic. I mean, he really is. It's not. I mean, he's stupid for lining up, but that whole situation, notwithstanding, don't even want to get in that, because of course, what do they show the next day? It's Jalen Waddle lining up in the exact same spot multiple times. No issue. I don't want to complain. He was offsides. It is what it is. But I don't trust anybody else outside of those two.
Okay. We just got some Ari Mirov, who you can follow at My Sports Update. Huge fan of his notifications. Just released a few big time players that are out. We've already mentioned Tyreek Hill. Javon Holland is out. We know about Olave. We know about Nico, Christian Watson. A.J. Dillon is out. So now that goes back to, now Aaron Jones is, his name is now entering the discussion in terms of volume there for the Green Bay Packers, although I still think it's more of a receiving game. I'm a little bit more confident in Aaron Jones just because of the volume, but I'm not confident because, just the production and the injury history, and we don't know where that leads. Does that change your opinion for Aaron Jones, knowing that A.J. Dillon is now out?
No, I actually thought A.J. Dillon would be out. That's what I was saying. Like I said earlier, he had that broken thumb. I didn't think he was going to play at all, but I still don't like Aaron Jones that much. I think that I don't want to put him at an RB, like a flex, because that's where he's at. I mean, as far as my rankings would go, he's right around that 30, 3 range, 34. And that's just, it's not trustworthy, but it's opportunity. No Vita Vea, like I said, that's probably the biggest thing right there. I think his value. Huh? And
no Devin White also.
Oh, no Devin White either. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't really bother me as much, but it's still significant. I don't know what that means for a linebacker for Tampa Bay too. For people with that, I wouldn't go look at
Dennis. You wouldn't look at him as a potential.
Not necessarily, like
really, really deep.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the guy. I just don't love.
And I got you.
Starting.
Got a question here from Calvo. What's up, fellas? What's up with you? Pick 2, Waddle, Puka, Moore, in that order for me. Waddle and Puka. And then DJ Moore after that.
Yeah, man. Wait, hold on. Tell me, who was it again?
Jalen Waddle, Puka Nacua, or DJ Moore. Pick 2. And DJ Moore, pick 2.
I'm gonna go DJ Moore and I'm gonna go DJ Moore and Puka. Actually, I like Waddle. I just think that this has all the weird like vibe that this Miami Jets game is going to be bad, and I don't like it. And I can't. I just have. How do we not start DJ Moore? What has DJ Moore done with Justin Fields that has ever taken him out of the wide receiver one conversation?
Look, it's one of those things where it's like, look, he is a wide receiver one. Puka Nacua has been very, 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 very good against and this is a really, really, really good matchup. So do you trust the matchup or do you trust the player? We know the situation with Cleveland and the whole weather thing to take into consideration there. That's the dilemma, right? I don't hate DJ Moore in place of Waddle. Again, it's one of those things without target volume. And then what does this mean for Waddle? Does that mean he's lining up now? Is Sauce Gardner going to be on him now? Or is he? I think you swayed me. I think I am agreeing with you, Puka and DJ Moore here.
And I have Waddle as a top 15, 16 option too. So it's not like he's super far down. Go ahead.
V Cruz 05 over on YouTube with Olave out. Rashee Rice or Calvin Ridley?
I have Rice, but it's close. Just I think the Baltimore matchup's a little bit more difficult than New England, and Rashee Rice's involvements just feels like guaranteed at this point, even though Ridley's been really solid as of late too.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Rice as well. Should we get to the IDP situation here? Okay,
absolutely. So you start with New England.
Okay, give me the fun one. I would, again, really, really deep leagues here. I would not be. What's the word I'm trying to say? Anthony Jennings. We talk about the fantasy point production in recent weeks. Had a dud week last week. Look, he played a majority of snaps. He did not have a win rate. It was 0. He had a pressure rate of 5. But he did have a few good weeks there. No, I'm sorry. I really tried really hard there, Nate, to give a good argument for starting anybody outside of a Kyle Duggar. And even then, Kyle Duggar for me and Jabril Peppers are kind of a low DB3, DB4 options there. So I can't give you a confident defensive player for New England outside of those. And even then, I'm kind of
Yeah, no. So KC, you're going to start Chris Jones. George Karlaftis is in a good spot, I believe, as well, especially with, like I said, the news around the New England Patriots offensive line, Trent Brown, and some of the other weaknesses there. Linebacker Nick Bolton, we saw came in, got an immediate, like I would say, heavy volume of snaps from what I was expecting. I really didn't expect. I don't want to say I didn't expect 75% because I think that's about where I was at. And so for him to come in and play 92%, I was really excited. And tackle efficiency was there. And that was he had that big like cast on his arm still, which I'm hoping that he gets used to playing with that because that did limit. He had Josh Allen kind of like one arm tackled that Josh Allen broke through. So I don't think he needs that to take down Bailey Zappi or any of the other quarterbacks we may see for New England, whoever it could be a plethora of multiple ones if they get to it. But I like Nick Bolton. No other linebacker I'm really thrilled with. And at safeties, it's so hard with the Chiefs because they blitz different safeties. Like Trent McDuffie could be the recipient of the biggest game because he'll play a lot of slot and box snaps, and he could blitz effectively, but it bounces around. Justin Reed had a big game, so I'm going to avoid recommending any serious safeties or corners unless you have a super deep league. So
let's go to the depressing game for me. Washington at Los Angeles. No Jamin Davis out for the year. No Brian Robinson out, hamstring injury. Aaron Donald should be good to go. Questionable though with I believe it's a groin injury, but don't hold me on that. Washington, and for me, Antonio Gibson is probably the most confident start I have here. I would like to think that Sam Howell realizes he has Terry McLaurin on his roster and starts targeting him a lot more. I can't confidently tell you any Washington wide receiver, and it's going to be one of those situations where it's basically the open guy, not predicated on uh, target share, anything along those lines that we use as predictive metrics, to try and figure out where the ball is going. I honestly think it's going to be a situation where wherever it is, and it's probably going to be one of those situations where, again, Sam Howell. Okay, let me put it another way. Sam Howell, Antonio Gibson, super confident in. Sam Howell's going to get 300 yards passing, and it's going to do nothing for stability for any of the wide receiving options because they're all going to get diluted down because he's just going to pass it to whoever is open, and that pisses me off. On the flip side, for the defensive side of the ball for Washington, I understand people want to make David Mayo a thing because no Jamie Davis. I'm not. It's still Cody Barton, Cameron Curl, defensive tackle leagues. You could make the case for Jonathan Allen and or Deron Payne, but am I confidently starting them? Well, depending. I mean, Kyron Williams, his volume has been obviously tremendous. But for me, it's Cody Barton and Cameron Curl confidently for IDP for Washington.
Gotcha. Yeah. You're going to start Matthew Stafford. He's been in this implied point total. Should be solid there. The Kyron Williams train is going to continue to roll. You're starting Puka. You're starting Cooper Kupp. You're not starting anybody else. Tutu Atwell's out. So we talked about a little bit Demarcus Robinson, and that's only in those specific stretch situations where people were talking about earlier. Tyler Higbee's back, but I wouldn't start him necessarily. There's too many other mouths to feed in that offense. Defensively speaking, it's pay attention to Michael Hope, Aaron Donald, Brian Young, Kobe Turner, all names of rotational pieces against Washington offensive line that struggled immensely. So I think any one of them could have value for sure, but there's been some questionable tags and some injuries. We'll keep posted along the lines as that goes. Ernest Jones is a great start this week, I do believe, as well. Washington's been very generous to opposing defensive IDP-wise scoring across all different levels, which makes me want to consider JJ the third, John Johnson the third, and Jordan Fuller. If I had to choose, I would choose Fuller. I think his tackle floor has just been a little bit more solid over the past really season. So that's the LA. Let's go to San Francisco at Arizona. 12-point favorites, big 48.5 point total. San Francisco wise, I'm gonna say this. Purdy, yes. McCaffrey, yes. Ayuk, yes. Debo, yes. Kittle, yes. And defensively speaking, you're gonna start Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Nick Bosa, and I'm debating. I go back and forth on any safeties, but I don't want to trust any of them. I think last week we saw, which was a good week for Jair Brown, but I don't trust it going back to him having a good week. What's Arizona got in store for you?
Kyler Murray. I'm not trusting James Conner. Michael Wilson, multiple flex spots, yes. Trey McBride. Okay. On the defensive side of the ball, it's really for me that the tandem that jumps out here is Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker. I think you could start both of them on your roster if you were somehow that fortunate and feel confident there. That's all I'm really feeling confident here. We got a question here from Ken. Westbrook Akini or Dontavion Wicks now that I lost Tyreek Hill. I think Akini is also
illness. So I don't try. Illnesses are what they are. Yeah. I bet he probably plays.
Yeah, I like Dontavion Wicks the most. Like I said, I like his efficiency metrics. He just needs to increase target volume, and hopefully we'll see that with Christian Watson out. Joe over on Facebook, Tyreek is out, so I'm down to slim pickings. A Chan. God, stop it, Joe. Devon Chan or Rashid Rice. Going into my flex. I gotta be honest with you. We've been talking about all morning how ugly this game is going to potentially be for the Dolphins and the Jets here. Mostert's been getting a lot of the work here. I would go Rashid Rice.
Yeah, I tend to lean the same way. I think Chan's a bigger like boom week. We know what we could see out of him. It only takes 6 touches for the guy to have an RB1 finish, and that's what he's done. I mean, he's got 4 top 5 finishes on his resume so far. He also has 2 bottom 50 finishes, but those are on 8% snaps and 4% snaps. So when he's played 40% snaps or more, the guy's had no less than a top 20 finish. So you want to start him. I just don't know if he'll get to 40% I don't know how utilization is. I think Rice is just a little bit safer, but I think it's
so you would say boom for if you need upside at Chan for Rice.
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead. We were on San Francisco, Arizona, talked about that. Dallas and Buffalo -2, 49.5 point total. These afternoon, evening games are going to be at least exciting, which is great going into your fantasy playoffs. Is the early afternoon slate, you sit back for these 4:00 and evening games, and everyone's a 40-point total or more. Give me the Dallas side.
Look, it's Brandon Cooks, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard. Those are the guys. Even Ferguson, I believe he's been getting more work. So give me all those players this week versus basically starting your studs in this matchup. On the defensive side of the ball, you're starting Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence. God damn you, DeMarcus Lawrence! And I say this as a Commanders fan, like so much opportunity. Just the lack of production is very disconcerting. Linebacker position, Nate, you wrote about him, Marquise Bell. The cheat code, in many fantasy platforms, he's eligible as both a defensive back and a linebacker. He is the number 2 linebacker there next to Damone Clark. So you're potentially getting in your defensive back spot linebacker tackle numbers, which is always a good thing. Defensive back for the Dallas Cowboys, man, Jaron Kearse and Donovan Wilson have just been utter disappointments this year compared to their performances the past couple of years. So I think you can do better there. Although, no, I'll just leave it at that for Dallas.
Gotcha. Yeah, we know where we're at with Josh Allen. I'm 100% on board with James Cook. I mean, with Joe Brady in control, he's been a different player as far as like utilization and opportunity and just performance. So very happy with James Cook as my RB2 if that's where I need him at. As far as the wide receiving core, Stephon Diggs, despite being like the wide receiver 7 in full point, he's had a couple like really dud weeks, and that's been dud weeks even without Gabe Davis doing anything. But he's still a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Gabe Davis, this is the week. This is what they say. It's been for the last 6 weeks now. It's been like 0, 20, 0, 20, 0, 20. Last week 0. This week 20. Don't start him. I don't trust it. And Dalton Kincaid, a little banged up with Dawson Knox. I still like Dalton Kincaid more. Don't love him. Defensive side is a little trickier for Buffalo because without AJ Epinesa now, I expect Gregory Rousseau and Leonard Floyd to play a lot more of the snaps as a whole. But Dallas's offensive line, pretty stingy, doesn't allow much. Terrell Bernard should have the volume there. Will he have the tackle efficiency against Dallas? I think there's opportunity for him to have a low-end LB2 week. At safety, Jordan Poyer is there. Micah Hyde left the game, didn't return. The combination could lead more involvement and necessity for Jordan Poyer as a whole. I know there's corners in this game. We can talk about both. Deron Bland is someone that you're probably going to put in your lineup, especially against this, I would say, turnover-prone Josh Allen that we see. So Deron Bland is probably in there. If Stephon Gilmore is healthy and plays, you're looking for cornerbacks to target against Josh Allen, you can do so. And then Taron Johnson is the slot corner against a Dallas team that does utilize a lot of that real estate into the slot. So jump to the next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we get to the next 2 games, just to round out the show, if you don't mind, let's round out these next 3 questions really quickly. Warning, starting Barkley, Breece Hall. I also have Mostert at flex and Ridley as an option. Who do you suggest? I don't like Breece Hall. I'm sorry. I don't like Breece Hall. We talked about it earlier. The volume just hasn't been there. The production hasn't really been there. I like Barkley. I actually like Barkley, Mostert, and Ridley, to be honest with you, and I would take out Brees.
Yeah, that's man. It's full point, I'm guessing. If it's in full point, I still have to start Hall. I don't love it, but his volume and the receiving game is just too heavy in terms of targets, just to give him that safety at floor. I would go Barkley, Hall, and then Mostert. Man, Ridley just has the frustratingly high amount of volume over the last 2 or 3 weeks now, where it's been it bounced back. It was 30%, then like down to 17. Now 25% last week, but he hasn't done much with. I mean, it's been outside. It's like a wide receiver 30 and 40 over the last 2 weeks. So yeah, I'm taking those 3 running backs.
Okay, we go to the next question. Hill owner 2 half PPR: Gus Edwards, Tajay, Dalton Schultz, Darren Waller, Demario Douglas on waivers 2. I wonder if he means 2. Okay, never mind. I'm assuming you want to pick one. I would go Waller. No, yeah, I would go Darren Waller. To be honest with you,
me too. Yeah, me too.
All right, go to the next one with Olave. Who should I start? Jalen Water, JSN, or Rashid Shaheed?
Non-PPR. Doesn't matter for me. Still Waddle.
Yep. Okay, we go to the next one. Mahomes or Sam Howell? I'm going to go.
Do it. It is.
I almost said pie bet, but I'm glad that we're agreeing here. Sam Howell, Zeke or ETN? I would go Zeke. What about you?
I'm going to go Zeke as well.
All right, again, we go to last one here. A Chan or Singletary for flex, or do I go for the Taysom Hill upside?
Singletary for me.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right, we're in agreement there. Baltimore at Jacksonville, -3.5, 41.5. Over under. Kyle Hamilton, questionable, although I did not see any notifications, so he looks like he will be playing this week for Jacksonville. We talked about how we're seeing a downward trajectory in Travis Etienne going against Baltimore this week. Do you have to start him, Nate? And if so, temper expectations. Would you agree?
Yeah, you do. I mean, you're going to be hard pressed, and unless it's just a plethora of riches or more of a shallow league, you're still fine. Don't get me wrong. I think that you're expecting he's as the RB6 overall. You're wanting RB1 numbers, and I think that you're going to get probably middle RB2 numbers just to stay away from Baltimore strength, which is its secondary. So yeah, I low end RB1, mid RB2.
Okay. And then for Jacksonville, we talked about Evan Ingram. We talked about the inconsistency for Calvin Ridley. I am curious as far as Parker Washington. We saw his involvement as soon as Christian Kirk went down due to injury a couple of weeks ago. That could be a desperation DFS play right there, cheap salary. But as far as for your fantasy playoffs, I'm not starting it.
He was 4% target last week. I don't trust. I think it was a great story, but I wouldn't do it, especially against that's their strength. Their strength is their secondary in Baltimore. I'm avoiding that altogether.
For the Ravens, Mitchell, OBJ, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, Lamar Jackson, obviously. For the defensive side of the ball for Baltimore, besides Roquan, Patrick Queen,
Justin Matabuki.
How do I forget him? Yeah, even as a defensive tackle, he's still somebody you want to start in defensive line only leagues. Missing anybody here, Nate?
No, not that I can think of as far as from the Baltimore side, Jacksonville side. Linebackers you're going to start for sure between Aluakon. I'm going to start Devin Lloyd. I'm decently comfortable with that. And Rayshon Jenkins is one of my starts of the week because Baltimore being very generous to opposing safeties. I love that matchup. I don't really care for and then Josh Allen. I know that it's Lamar Jackson and company, but Josh Allen he's the biggest absolute boomer bust defensive line lineman we've had all year. He's just been monster. Miami defense or Atlanta? Man, I gotta tell you, anytime I can go against the Jets offense, I think about it, and I think I'm gonna still stick with Miami. What about you? Atlanta against Carolina?
I like the fact the Dolphins have actual edge rushers versus Atlanta, which do not. So
correct. There you go. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, let's go to the Monday night game. Wow, just quarterbacks galore. Like Jalen Hurts may not play, Geno Smith may not play. I like this for the running back situation. I like DeAndre Swift. He has been kind of not playing well as of late, but I mean they got to implement some type of offensive philosophy. On the flip side, Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet, I just can't co-sign even as a flex option, to be honest with you. Just the inefficiency has been there. Wide receivers, I like Jackson Smith-Njigba. Just this guy is just, this rookie is just coming out strong, this latter half of the season. We saw even with Drew Lock, DK Metcalf have success. Tyler Lockett. For me, it's actually Metcalf, JSN, then Lockett. Colby Parkinson, dart throw at tight end. More of a DFS play. For Philly, who you're starting for Philly, and I don't think and I don't think one of those names is Dallas Goedert. I'm not really a huge fan of his. He hasn't really warranted being a must-start tight end this season. Outside of Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, anybody else here for any offense and defense, Nate?
No, I can't think of any other massive plays. I mean, some of the sneaky play, I guess, could be Boye Mafe, just because Jalen Hurts does hold on to the ball long if Jalen Hurts plays. If he doesn't, then it's Marcus Mariota who can run himself into a couple sacks. And as much of a benefit the offensive line in Philadelphia has been, they do allow more pressures, but I think that's possibly a situation with Jalen Hurts as well. And I want to see, I think I saw somewhere that Darius Slay is out. Yeah. So he's out because he had that knee. And then Cam Jurgens is who the offensive lineman that's out. So I think that interior line, Dexter Lawrence, or not Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams could have some pressure. But nope, not doing anything. Zach Cunningham is out, so we're not doing anything with the linebackers outside of him. Pay attention to Shaq Leonard's involvement this week. Could see a little bit more, but other than that, I think that wraps up this.
Wagner,
this
Brooks. Yep, of course. Sweet. All right. Well, just a little bit over 12 o'clock. Thank you all very much for joining us. We a lot of you joined us this morning, week 15. Thank you very much for trusting us. And I hope you're more confident now heading into, for many of you, the first round of the fantasy football playoffs.
Right.
So yeah, thanks, Nate. As always, it's been great, man.
Absolutely. You get out there. Make sure if any questions, hit us up. We will be happy to get you going. Have a great day.